headlines from the London Guardian. Trump's going to destroy the world, and this man is the reason he got elected. The devil in Mr. Jones. And the article in the Daily Beast ends with saying that I'm the devil. The article ended in the Daily Beast by saying that I'm very calm and private, and so I must be lying about all this on purpose just to be evil. What? You're the one saying I'm fake and that I'm saying I'm an actor when I said I believe what I'm saying, but sometimes I play satire roles to illustrate things when I'm wearing a lizard mask. Everybody who's thinking understands what that means. But ask yourselves, why are these people projecting onto us that we're going to destroy the earth and that I'm the devil? Because this is the evil globalist system projecting onto me and you what they are. They say I'm a counterfeit and a fake, just like they say Trump's a fake and didn't really win the election. The Russians did it. They're saying you're fake and you didn't really vote. They're saying populism didn't really have a win. They're saying you're a failure. They're saying you're a fraud. They're saying you don't have any power because they know you have power and they want to convince you you don't have power. Yeah, I'm going to destroy the earth with Trump and I'm the devil. Bull. I wear my heart on the sleeve, and you see the effects of what we've done together, changing the world. And the proof is in the pudding. You judge a tree by its fruits. And ask yourself why the globalists are so eager to bring me down. It's Monday, April 24th, 2017, and you have found it, the American resistance, the spearhead in the fight against the globalist. That's why I'm so honored that we are one of the most attacked organizations and groups in the world. Why I'm very thankful for your prayers, your support, and obviously our amazing crew in Austin, Texas, and all they're doing, making this transmission possible. Paul Joseph Watson's going to be in studio hosting while I am going through my trials and tribulations because I'm fighting the globalist, and those that love me, as Christ said, as I love Christ, will be persecuted for it. And I'm not on some high horse as Mr. Goody Two-Shoes, but my heart is right, and I want justice and freedom. I want to stop the oppression of the innocents. I want to stop the forced abortions around the world. I want to educate people about abortion so they'll make the right decision and stop it. I want to ban partial birth abortion. I want to fight eugenics. I want to fight the culture of death. So that's why they say I'm the culture of death, and I hate people, and I'm a liar, and I'm a fake, and all these other things, is because they're so scared. They know that we're willing to go on to the end and never back down, whatever the cost may be, because the cost of submitting to these tyrants is so much greater. And people always ask me, the number one question I get is, why are you still alive? Well, God, fate, but also I've been very, very visible in the spotlight. So I've said before they kill me, now listen, because this is important, and I say a lot of important stuff, obviously, we live in important times. I've always said that if they really try to assassinate my character and really go to the bottom of the barrel and make stuff up and really put 5 or 6 investigative journalists on me at all times in Austin, Texas, following me basically everywhere I go, that is an attempt to assassinate my character, to assassinate my image, to assassinate who I am by building a straw man. Because first they killed who you are in the media. First they kill your image, and then they kill you personally. Gary Webb, I talked to him about 2 weeks before they killed him, the guy that wrote about the CIA and drug dealing. He's been vindicated, of course. Films have been made about it, exposing all of it. Kill the Messenger was one, came out a few years ago, very powerful, documentary film style, but cinematic, that he knew they were coming to kill him. Because he had his new book coming out proving everything he'd said previously. They tried to discredit him. They said he was discredited. He never was discredited. Just like 0 Point Energy was never discredited. Or just like so many other technologies they've shelved have never been discredited. They just say they're discredited, and in the military-industrial complex, Combine, the technocrats that run it, that Eisenhower warned of, they then never give any funding out for it. So there's forbidden information that's seen as disruptive, and there's forbidden technology that's seen as disruptive. And one of the big things Trump wants to do, I know from the inside, from the highest levels, is try to turn loose of a lot of those technologies that they've said are disruptive. He's not just turning on our old technology like coal, or saying we're going to have a manned space program again, but he's doing so many other things to unlock the secrets of the universe, because many of them have already been unlocked. Think how far we've come since 1,000 years ago, or since 2,000 years ago. So let me run down some of the news coming up today. U.S. tells North Korea to cease destabilizing actions and rhetoric. French election, Marie Le Pen, of course they have fake polls saying she'd lose by 10 points. She won in the runoff out of 11 people running and is now going up against the socialist they call a centrist Macron, who wants open borders to bring more of the jihadis in and to arrest French men and women who criticize the Islamicists. He, of course, has come out, he's a globalist, and said, just get used to terror attacks. Just accept it. People killing you, burning cities down every few weeks. It's no big deal. So we have that information. That's all coming up with Paul Joseph Watson in studio in the next segment. But let me get to the attack on InfoWars first right now. I get asked all the time why I don't give mainstream media interviews anymore unless they're live. And I have been offered to go on The View Live and Good Morning America Live and a few things this last week. I haven't had time. Plus, there's obviously in my civil case right now in my family, there's a gag order, so there's no point in going on there. But all these other channels and stations don't even ask me to come on CNN or Fox News or CBS News or ABC News or Nightline or Colbert or Trevor Noah or any of these shows as they lie about me. And then other print reporters are always asking me, they're always saying, Alex, why don't you let us come to Austin and interview you? And it's because every time I do it, I used to do it every week, then it was every month, then it was every year. And it's because here's a microcosm from the Daily Beast, The Devil and Mr. Jones, out today. I am at the RNC in July. I get a phone call, and Tucker Carlson wants to have dinner. So I go and I sit down at this table with Tucker Carlson and his son and his family and a bunch of reporters. And some of them are Democrats. And as I'm walking out, Roger Stone's at another table. He'd also been at dinner there with Carlson. We can show you a photo of this. And the Daily Beast has it. And they called me over. He said, hey, have a drink. And I was like, oh, I got to go back to work. But you can see Roger there with his vodka martini. So I sit there about 20 minutes talking to him. And these reporters say, man, you want to come on our podcast sometime? And I said, yeah, maybe. I said, is it live? And they said, well, we tape it or whatever. And I said, okay, maybe. And they said, man, you're really calm. And it was like 10 at night, 9 at night. And I said, well, I still got to go do some work, some live feeds. But I said, I've been up since, 5 a.m. is when I got this morning. I flew out of Austin at like 6 a.m., confronted Karl Rove that day and a lot more. I'm going to skip this network break. I haven't done that in a few days. I'm going to skip this network break coming up so I have more time before we get to Paul. And this is a microcosm. There's thousands of articles a day attacking me, literally thousands. Every major print newspaper, magazines, hundreds of internet sites, Daily Beast, Associated Press. So imagine people are saying, well, why don't you do interviews? And so I said, yeah, maybe I'll give you an interview sometime, but I really don't want to do it right now. I'm tired. They go, man, you're really calm. And I went, oh, I see where you're going with this. You're saying I'm not real because it's a standard deal. And I said, when I start thinking about the globalists, the bad things they're doing, how they're trying to take our guns, get rid of our borders, bring in jihadis, give North Korea nuclear reactors, and all the things the globalists have done to destabilize our world, enforce inoculations, and all the rest of it, I get angry. And that's really me. But I do allow the dog off the leash. It's real, but it's a mode. It's like saying, is it real when I'm passionate to my wife and tell her I love her? Yeah, it's real, but it's allowing myself into that mode. Like going to a football game and going, yeah, or going fishing and being quiet, or going to church and being, spiritual, or, having sex with your wife. I mean, it's all a mode. And they literally are waging war on language. They're waging war on communication. They're waging war on energy and just having a spirit. So I knew where it was going because it's always the same. It's like when I was on the BBC like 3 years ago, and right when the show ended, I'd been yelling at them, and I saw security ready to arrest me. So I shut up. I knew to shut up. Just like at CNN with Piers Morgan. Rob Dew was there. They had guys come out and say, you got a problem? You got a problem? And they even had cops and stuff when they took us out. They were like in our face, pissed. Like one producer, the lady was crying. And as soon as I got off that show, of course I was calm. And they go, oh, he's fake, he's calm once he goes off the air. Yeah, I'm on the air, upset on purpose to get people's attention, but I mean what I'm saying. So they talk to people like they're 3 years old, and it's always the same mode. So in this article, they say the Iron Sheik and some other wrestler, I didn't really follow wrestling when I was a kid that much, and it's were caught smoking pot together. But the thing was, the reason they were fired is they were caught because it was all fake, WWE. We're the ones that always said Republican Democrat establishment are working behind the scenes. That's all come out in the WikiLeaks. Like the WWE in the famous case of who was the Iron Sheik and who else? Iron Sheik and somebody else. It's in the article. But it's a famous case. I remember when I was, a kid. We're exposing the WWE of the New World Order. I don't have to sit there and say I'm real. It's ridiculous. Globalism has been exposed. The TPP has been reversed. Nationalism's rising all over the world. And info warriors, our viewers, our listeners, have been at the heart of that whole thing. So what I tell reporters when they surround me is they say, give us an interview, give us a quote. And I say, make up whatever you want. I had Der Spiegel here because they did an article exposing how the CIA was running hundreds of German newspapers. And I knew they were bad and leftist, but I thought maybe it'll be different because it's Europe. The guy lied and said that I said, want to suck my sausage. When I said, would you like some sausage? I bought the people barbecue. And I said at that point, I'm done. That's it. Or I'm going to record everything when reporters are interviewing me, and I'm going to put the interviews out in whole. That's my new rule. I'm going to put an audio recorder down, and I'm going to say this whole interview is going online when you publish. So just know that. In fact, that's how I'm going to get around this, because I've thought about it, and I've had that idea many times, but I've never actually carried it out. So Buckley, that's the new thing. I'll accept some interviews, but they have to sign an agreement that they won't say where our office is, they won't, get into my kids or something, and that I'm going to audio record it so that I can at least put a record out of what is said and done, because they're so deceptive. So let me explain. All they wanted to do was wave me over to that table at that Italian restaurant. It was an excellent place there on the water in Cleveland. They call me over. They call you over just to be a prop. They call you over just to act like they talk to you and to act like they're not hacks or they're not mercenaries who are there pretending to be reporters. We're real, we're cutting edge, we've changed the world, we're changing the paradigm. So you got Stephen Colbert coming out saying, oh, Alex Jones, says, yeah, Stephen Colbert doesn't take it home at night to his kids, just like I don't. And he goes, yeah, you bet I don't take Alex Jones home. You're all dirty like I have cooties. And you go, ooh, gross. And then, of course, there's Trevor Noah saying, oh, he believes that, ice crystal trails in the sky are toxic, are evil, are bad, and all the rest of this garbage. I mean, think about that. I'm not saying it's ice crystals. It's the CFR and the globalists admitting in their own public documents they're doing massive geoengineering to the atmosphere on record. All right, I'm going to throw this live to Paul Joseph Watson. And then I'm going to be back getting into China, North Korea, the economy, and more today. I'm going to be Skyping in live, Infowars.com/show. I want to thank you all for your support. And I want to ask you all to just think about why we're under such attack. It's because we're changing the world together. We're shattering the unelected globalist paradigm. And you can verify everything we're saying for yourselves. From the human-animal chimeras to the geoengineering to all of it, they don't want to have a debate about it. And they don't want me to put this out in an interesting fashion to get people out of their trance to think for themselves. Infowars.com/show. Spread that link. Now to Paul Joseph Watson hosting live.
We are live on the Alex Jones Show. It is Monday, April 24th. And of course, we're covering the aftermath of the absolutely monumental battle between nationalism and globalism in France with the election there. Marine Le Pen obviously squeaked through to the second round, but also Emmanuel Macron, the establishment candidate, is through to the second round, which is a big problem. He needed to be knocked out given the fact that all the big money is behind him. Again, the outgoing government is behind him. We've laid all that out. He is the quintessential establishment candidate. He is the new Tony Blair. And it looks like France, according to the polls at the moment, which of course were wrong before Brexit and Trump, but in this case the gap is far wider. It looks like the French will vote for their own national suicide, come May the 7th in a couple of weeks' time. Now, there's still 2 weeks to change that round, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that the nationalist populist revolution is over because Marine Le Pen looks set to lose this battle. Again, she did get through to the second round, but there you see an article out of Breitbart, which is a really good breakdown of this. Manchurian candidate Macron is France's Obama. And in that article, he breaks it down, the fact that he's a Rothschild banker. He was literally cultivated in all these elitist institutions. Delingpole writes, quote, "All France has done is to guarantee the election of a lame duck caretaker president, continuation Hollande." And Hollande has now endorsed him, by the way, as we predicted he would, who will ensure that France's ongoing decline will continue unabated. Its industries will stagnate. Its social unrest will intensify. Ever greater numbers of its citizenry will be murdered in homegrown terrorist attacks. Its economy will tank. The country that was once arguably the most civilized and beautiful and sophisticated in all the world will descend ever deeper into chaos, ugliness, and despair. And we've talked about it. I've talked about it. I went to France 2 years ago, 3 years ago, went to France 1 year ago. You can see the decline. You can see the migrants on the streets, the intimidation, women afraid to go outside. Of course, they've had 6 jihadist attacks in Paris alone in the last 3 years, and yet the French people seemingly will vote for the person who will continue all of that, offering no alternative whatsoever, offering no policies to address the chronic problem with youth unemployment, the chronic problem with jihadist terrorism, the chronic problem with a lack of integration when it comes to these Islamic ghetto areas. But none of that's a problem. The biggest problem is my tweet from yesterday, which you can flash up on the screen. Before the vote was happening, hours before, when Marine Le Pen supporters was going to the polls to vote for her, bearing in mind the only female candidate, or the only one with a chance at this point, she would have been the first female president of France in history. And yet, what did you have? So-called feminists, Antifa feminists, attacking people, trying to cause riots, trying to block French people voting for a woman. But they're the big feminists, actually trying to block the first female president of France in history. And a lot of people were very triggered by that tweet. You see it got like 8,600 retweets. It went around the Twitter echo chamber, which is basically what it is at this point, with these far leftists tweeting it out to virtue signal to each other, which is what they do every single time. Calling me out for criticizing so-called feminists who are actively trying to block people from voting for France's first female president. They responded in kind on Twitter, and if you go to my Twitter homepage, you can scroll through some of these responses. I'll read them out because these people need to be called out. So Luke Savage said, and these are all verified accounts, these are all prominent people in the media, in activism, all feminists. Luke Savage of CBC Canada, so-called feminists are protesting a fascist, so much for the tolerant left. Well, they're endorsing Islamofascism in protesting against Le Pen, the only candidate who has promised to address Islamofascism, which is creeping into France, Sharia law. And again, to the far left, a fascist is anyone who disagrees with them. So if you set the bar that low, then everyone is a fascist. Here's another response from Feminista Jones. Worst take about France's election so far. And then they'll link to the tweet that you just saw that I tweeted out yesterday. So again, they take your tweet, they quote it, and bounce it around their own echo chamber. They don't actually have a response. Oh no, they don't have an actual argument to respond to it, to debunk your points. They just bounce it around each other's virtue signaling echo chamber and think that's good enough. And when you call them out on Twitter, they have a mental breakdown, get PTSD, and in some cases threaten lawsuits and claim you're harassing them for disagreeing with them on Twitter. There you see that response, 5,100 retweets. Feminista Jones, again, none of them have got an actual argument. Here's another one. This only goes to prove that feminists are not blind and vote for the best person regardless of gender. Really? It doesn't go to prove that they're literally voting for somebody in Macron who has promised to continue the policy of bringing into the country adherents of a belief system that literally treats women like cattle. Islamism. And the only candidate that is trying to reverse that, she's bad. The people who are protesting her, they're good. They're the real feminists, as they literally get behind a belief system that has something called Taharush Gamia, otherwise known as the rape game. A belief system that embraces honor killings, acid attacks, forced arranged marriage, female genital mutilation, the notion that it's acceptable to take women as slaves. That's the belief system they're defending. We've played the clips. The feminists at the anti-Trump march in Germany, chanting Allah Akbar. They're literally aligning with, making an alliance with the most anti-woman belief system on the planet ever. But I'm bad for tweeting out that it's silly for these feminists to protest against a woman who would be the first female president of France. Absolutely insane. That's what they're upset about. They're not upset about women being harassed, catcalled, physically assaulted on the streets. They're not upset about Cologne. They're not upset about what's happening in Sweden. They're upset about my tweet. And that tells you everything about how the far left is now making an alliance with Islamism. We'll be back on the Alex Jones Show live. Breaking news coming up. Don't go away. We are live on the Alex Jones Show. We have two huge guests coming up at the top of the next hour. We have Tommy Robinson. Actually, he's in the third hour. Of course, we've had Tommy on before. He's here to break down his latest confrontations, his encounters with the media, who he's now replacing, and they're not happy about that, and with online trolls. He actually went to somebody's house who called for his assassination on Twitter. If you haven't seen that video, we're going to play it in the background while Tommy talks about it later on in the show. That's in the third hour. Second hour, we have Front National parliamentary candidate Tony Thomas to discuss the French election and if Marine Le Pen can still win. So he's from Marine Le Pen's party. He's a supporter. Obviously, he knows all about it. He's also actually in South Korea. So we're going to also ask him about the tensions building up there. Is the citizenry panicking, or are they calm given all the build-up to war that we've seen in the past few weeks? That's Tony Thomas. He's coming up at the top of the next hour for his first appearance on the Alex Jones Show. That's going to be very interesting from a French perspective. But let's go back to that tweet again. This is what I tweeted yesterday as voting was taking place in the French presidential election. So-called feminists are trying to block people voting for a woman. She would be the first female president of France. Let that sink in. And it created an absolute tidal wave of butthurt on Twitter from the usual suspects. The feminists, the far left that have aligned, the regressives that have aligned with Islamism because they broadly share the same beliefs. We showed you the clips before, the feminists chanting Allah Akbar at the anti-Trump rally in Berlin, Germany. We've showed you the ISIS manuals about how they want to recruit members of the far left, give them weapons, and radicalize them. They literally say that in ISIS manifestos because they broadly share the same goals. Again, doesn't mean that feminists are going to go out to Syria and fight for ISIS, but it just shows you the ideological basis of both those extreme belief systems are beginning to align. So a lot of people got very triggered on Twitter, as they usually do. Here's another one. Again, these are all verified accounts from people within the media, so we're going to call them out. So again, I tweeted, why are feminists rallying, rioting to block people from voting for a woman? One person responded, Rosalind Warren, today in I don't understand feminism. That's it. So again, they don't have an argument. They just think by highlighting your tweet and bouncing it around their own stupid echo chamber, that gives them social brownie points. Classic virtue signaling, classic nonsense doesn't constitute an argument. So again, I responded, today in I don't have an argument, but I know how to pander and virtue signal to idiots. And that was the sum of the argument that they had. Here's another one. And this is all in the past 12 hours, by the way. Charles Clark responded to the same tweet. I've been on Twitter for 8 years, and this is by far the dumbest tweet I've ever seen. Again, doesn't explain why, doesn't have an actual argument as to why making that point is dumb, which was a very good point, which is why it got retweeted 8,000 times. Again, it shows you they never have an argument. They just get triggered by it. And triggered is a very overused word. It's been hijacked by the left So whenever you criticize them, oh, now you're the triggered snowflake. Again, they're very lazy. They can't even come up with their own insults, but it's overused to mean anyone who has a cogent, logical criticism of another belief system or idea. That's not how it should be used, but that's how they use it. And again, they've got no comeback whatsoever. They're truly triggered because they just frothingly respond and bounce it around their own echo chamber, but have no actual counter-argument. And it's the same in all these cases. Again, they're not concerned about the fact that they're bringing in hundreds of thousands of people from a belief system that literally treats women in some countries on a par with cattle and animals, female genital mutilation, acid attacks, forced arranged marriages, honor killings, the whole lot. An ideology that literally has a rape game. That's literally what it's called, the rape game. You saw what happened to Lara Logan in Egypt. That's now happening in Europe on a daily basis. We've had the stories. We have Turks in Germany, which we're going to get to a report later, raping a teenager, but saying, oh, I don't understand the word no. Oh, and in my culture, rape is just rough sex. And they actually say that in the article. In his culture, it's different. It's seen as acceptable to just rape women. So he's not going to jail. He's not being deported. That's the progressive ideology that these people are apologists for in every single instance. We had Tim Pool. You remember he went out to Sweden to document the migrant crisis in the suburbs there, got kicked out by the police because they said there were about to be a riot if he stayed in the area, with all these Islamists crowding around, putting their masks up, getting ready to throw stones after they'd previously attacked an Australian film crew. There you see him being escorted out of that migrant area in, I believe it was Stockholm, one of the suburbs there. He also went to France after that, spoke to an American who was living in France, and she basically said, yeah, we don't just get catcalled and harassed vocally on the street by migrants. They will literally come up to us and try to expose our breasts. But we have to be tolerant, so I guess we just have to put up with it. That's literally what she said, almost word for word, when he went to France and asked people about it. This is what they're willing to tolerate in the name of progressivism, while criticizing me, calling me an idiot for saying the sight of feminists, blocking people in France from voting for a female candidate who would be the first female president of France. I'm bad for saying that. But all of that Marine Le Pen has promised to address, the only candidate who's promised to address it, she's the fascist again, because anyone who disagrees with the far left is a fascist. Doesn't leave much room for diversity of opinion, does it? Absolutely incredible. But now we see what's happening in France. They're basically voting for their own national suicide. This is an article out of the Daily Mail, which was actually, we covered it a week ago, but it's integral to what happened yesterday. Headline, French election farce. Polling card blunder means 500,000 people could vote twice. Could spell peril for Marine Le Pen. Now, bearing in mind she came second, but as we'd said last week, she probably needed to win to build that momentum. Macron probably needed to be eliminated because he is the establishment candidate. They all will rally around him for the second round, and the polls show overwhelmingly that he will almost certainly win. Problem is, 500,000 people living outside of France, who the vast majority of whom would be expected to vote for candidates other than Marine Le Pen, received 2 ballots. Oh, and by the way, the French government doesn't really care about it. They might investigate it after the election. The French police don't really care about it. They might investigate it after the election. They're just going to let it go. Imagine if Marine Le Pen supporters had been sent 500,000 extra ballots, you know, in a predominantly Le Pen supporting area. There'd be an absolute outrage. They'd probably suspend the election. It happens in favor of the establishment candidate because these people living outside of France are more likely to be leftist, globalists. They're going to vote for him. It happens there. Nobody gives a damn. Oh, we might investigate it after the election. She loses by 2%. Again, she's through to the second round, but she came second. She lost to Macron by 2%. That reversed itself, by the way, during the course of the vote. She was ahead by 3 to 4% at one point. Oh, but just by coincidence, a late onrush of votes for Macron, and 500,000 people, mainly his supporters, just got mailed 2 ballots by accident, and nobody really cares about it. We might investigate it after, you know, who cares? Absolutely incredible stuff. 500,000 extra ballots sent out. So no wonder he's come first. I mean, incredible. Westminster reports Le Pen-Macron TV debate on May the 3rd. Now, Macron's actually agreed to this debate, which a lot of people are surprised about because, of course, he's way ahead in the polls. He can only lose ground. She can only gain ground in a debate, but she would probably need to absolutely slaughter him to regain anything like what she needs to get close to him in the final 2 weeks of this election. Again, the question is, you know, France's next election is going to be in 5 years' time. They're continuing the same policies if they vote in Macron. Literally a Rothschild banker who's been working integrally within the French government, the same highly unpopular outgoing socialist French government that got just 6% of the vote. He's been in that government for years. Before that, he was a Rothschild banker. His entire shtick, this fake populist crap, was cooked up from within the French bureaucracy. He's the new Obama, hope and change, offering no change whatsoever. He's not going to shut down the mosques. He's not going to restrict Islamic immigration, which the vast majority of French people want. He's going to do absolutely nothing. This is just a continuation of Hollande. So they're voting for national suicide. It's basically over. Can they survive 5 years of it? Imagine the same policies in 5 years' time. 21 jihadist attacks in France since January 2015. They're voting for more of the same. Absolute insanity. Sputnik reports French presidential hopeful Le Pen wins 5% of votes in Paris. 5%. French presidential candidate Marine Le Pen, who succeeded to finish second in the first round of the presidential vote, gathered support of less than 5%. It was about 4.99%. Of voters living in the country's capital, the French Interior Ministry said Sunday after they counted 100% of the ballots. Macron, the establishment candidate, got 34.83% in Paris. So the epicenter of the jihadist attacks, 6 massive attacks in the last 3 years, and they overwhelmingly vote for more of the same. Do these people deserve what they get at some point? I mean, it's absolutely harrowing at this point. 5%, just 5% voted for Marine Le Pen. Here's an even more concerning story, which is translated out of a French news source called ParisMatch.com. ISIS moves 820 kilos of explosives from Turkey to France. Absolutely harrowing story. We translated it. In fact, I'm going to write this up for an article because English language media hasn't reported on it yet. According to Turkish authorities, Daesh, or ISIS, has recently sought to traffic a large quantity of explosives for a major operation on French territory. Members of the Islamic State have allegedly activated in recent weeks to carry 820 kilos of explosives from Turkey to France, according to a statement by Turkish authorities. Paris Match has been able to verify the claims. So they're talking about this. Can they stop it? Did they stop it? 820 kilos of explosives trafficked to France through Italy via Turkey. Of course, we had all the reports about the terror attacks focusing on the election. We had the attack on Friday where the police officer was shot. Now they're talking about 820 kilos of explosives trafficked into France for this major operation. Could there be another attack right before the election? Of course, it would only likely benefit Marine Le Pen. But given that she only got 5% of the vote in Paris, they're probably fully signed over to Stockholm Syndrome at this point. Hug a Muslim, continue the same policies, continue the same level of bloodshed. Absolutely amazing what's taking place in France right now. Again, as Delingpole points out in that article, which we flashed up earlier, doesn't mean that this nationalist or populist revolution sweeping the West is over if Marine Le Pen doesn't win. She's made strides. She's made strides since 5 years ago. She'll make strides again in 5 years. But what, if anything, will be left of polite society in France in 5 years' time? But again, 500,000 extra ballots sent out to people who are likely not her supporters. Probably a pretty good reason as to why Macron was able to make up that deficit, which we saw during the final hours of voting yesterday, and get that extra 2% he needed to carry the momentum through to the second round, which is on May the 7th. Sticking with Europe, Breitbart report only 2.65% of immigrants into Italy are refugees. Only 2.65%. According to official reports during the year 2016, only 2.65% of those immigrating into Italy were awarded asylum as refugees, with the vast majority staying on in the country as illegal undocumented immigrants. So they just disappear into the underground criminal economy as soon as they arrive there. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, a total of 181,000 migrants crossed the Mediterranean Sea into Italy during 2016, a record year in recent history. That figure does not include those who were able to enter the country undetected, but only those who are officially registered either by Italian officials or NGOs. So when you take out the numbers that just disappeared underground, who knows where they've gone? Who knows what beliefs they hold? 2.65%. And we've played the clips before where the police just turn up with a busload of migrants and force bed and breakfast owners, force hotel owners to just hand over their property. We've played that clip before with the old man crying and screaming. The police come with guns. They say, your hotel is now a home for migrants. It's a migrant camp. We're seizing your property to literally hand it over to migrants. That's happening more and more in Italy. And the NGOs, which are involved in bringing the migrants in, are now operating as a virtual taxi service, bringing them into Italy. We've talked about this before. There you see the clip I was just talking about. The police turn up, this old guy with the grey hair, they arrive, he's got a little bed and breakfast, little hotel. Remonstrating with the police. I think they later reported he had to go to hospital because he basically had a stroke, collapse because of the stress. They just bring in this busload of migrants from West Africa. Again, as we just said, only 2.65% of them are actual refugees. Oh, look, no women and children. Imagine my shock. They're not refugees. They're literally picking them up 11 miles off the coast of Libya. There you see, public anger growing at taxi NGOs. They call the people smugglers. People blame the people smugglers, blame the NGOs, blame these far-left groups. They're in direct communication with the people smugglers. They say, we have another boatload of migrants. We're 11 miles off the coast. Send the taxi. They send the ship. It brings them back to Italy. But again, what are we sold in the media? They're struggling to get here. They're fleeing war. 2.65% are actually refugees. These far-left groups are going out to Calais. They're going back to Calais, setting up food stalls to feed them. All the migrants are coming back there after they demolished the camp, after it created absolute carnage, after they were trying to hijack lorries to get into Britain to get on the welfare. Again, you look at the pictures, no women and children, because they're not refugee families. They're economic migrants. They're taking advantage of it. It's causing massive problems. But it seems that France has voted for more of the same if they're going to pick Macron in round 2. Incredible situation in Europe. We'll be back to talk about it more on the Alex Jones Show live. Breaking news at Infowars.com. We're live on the Alex Jones Show, and we're going to dip back into the news. Big guest coming up in the next hour as well. But we have now available at InfoWarsStore.com Caveman True Paleo Formula, 20% off for a limited time only. This is the outstanding new product we have, proving very popular with people there. You see the 5-star reviews again. For the first time ever, we're giving you 20% off. This is the first big discount we're offering on this, on our Caveman True Paleo Formula at InfoWarsStore.com while supplies last. Caveman fuses super high-quality bone broth with more than 7 different primal superfoods to help support healthy muscles, fight free radicals, and so much more. The unique formulation behind Caveman combines cutting-edge nutraceutical science with ancient nutrition to deliver powerful benefits. There you see some of the 5-star reviews. It has the turmeric root, the chaga mushroom, bee pollen, bone broth. Caveman really is the ultimate in true paleo nutrition. Love the chocolate flavor. Thank you so much. Great taste. Wonderful product. A lot of these products you can get elsewhere. They don't taste so good. This one does. I would buy this again. 5-star, 5-star, a new lease on life. People overflowing with positive comments about this new product. Now available for the first time at this discounted price, 20% off. It is Caveman True Paleo Formula, available at InfoWarsStore.com. So if you've been holding back on that, now is the time to jump in, because that discount's not going to stick around for long. We also have Survival Shield X2 available, and we have a new review, again, independent third-party 5-star review, best InfoWars product. This is Survival Shield X2. If you could only choose one product from the InfoWars Life products to use, this would be it. Only 3 drops per day, and it lasts forever. It's concentrated. Helps keep my iodine levels up for thyroid support and immune system strong. Haven't been sick in years. I've been using it. Highly recommended. I used to take a similar product years ago, and I had the same effect. Didn't get colds and flu. Hardly ever. Now I get them literally every 2 months. I need to get back on this. Now's the opportunity to do it. I'm surrounded by it. It is Survival Shield X2. Best InfoWars product, according to Jeff, who just left that 5-star review yesterday. And you can read the others at InfoWarsLife.com. Again, we're under constant assault on a daily basis. You've seen the piranhas attacking. It's a feasting session, they think. But we're not going anywhere, because we rely on your support. And you've shone through every single time we've asked for it. Amazing support by getting the products at InfoWarsStore.com. Daily Beast reports Sean Hannity accused of inviting Fox News guests to his room. Again, this is part of the piranha attack. You saw them bring down Bill O'Reilly. You've seen them bring down others. Happened to Milo. Now Sean Hannity's under assault, but he's striking back. Basically, one of his Fox News guests claimed that he invited her to his bedroom. She says it wasn't sexual assault. But Hannity shot back. He said, quote, "My patience with this individual is over. I have retained a team of some of the finest and toughest lawyers in the country who are now in the process of laying out the legal course of action we will be taking." He basically says he will not allow slander and lies about himself to go unchallenged, and says it's a coordinated effort to now silence those with conservative views, which is what we've talked about again and again. They always go for the personal. Always. And people just believe it because, of course, mud sticks. They pressure people's sponsors. They pressure networks to get people kicked off the air via these unfounded allegations. Well, Hannity is hitting back. But you can see what he means. This is part of the general trend to silence those with conservative views, not by having a better argument, but by sniping and attacking them personally. Well, we're going to fight back. It's happening right now. This is the InfoWars Show live, Infowars.com. Our guests coming up. Don't go away. We are back live on the Alex Jones Show. Tony Thomas is coming up. He's a parliamentary candidate for the National Front, which is Marine Le Pen's party. He's coming up in the next segment to talk about the fallout from the French election. Again, Macron #1, Marine Le Pen #2. The polls show or suggest that it's not going to be that tight a runoff because, again, all the establishment money is flooding in behind Macron. He's in pole position to coalesce that support. Again, his entire campaign literally created by the same bureaucracy, the same outgoing government. Now you see Francois Hollande has endorsed him exactly as I predicted in that video, which we played on last week's show. So Macron heads to the final round on May the 7th again. Globalism versus nationalism. Polls suggest it's not going to be tight. What could happen in that 2-week period that could change that? We're going to talk to Tony Thomas about that very subject. But sticking with France, this is John Bound's special report, French election, a populist endgame. Here it is.
The results of the votes in the first round of France's presidential election show a tight race between populist favorite Marine Le Pen and centrist Rothschild creation, a.k.a. Hollande 2.0, Emmanuel Macron. Macron, a former member of the Socialist Party from 2006 to 2009, began running as a centrist under the banner he created as recently as April 2016.
I have heard your expectations for a true change, for true democracy, for ecological and economic change in order to build a future of a stronger France in a Europe that is a protecting Europe. For this, I need your vote and I need your trust.
While Le Pen has called for numerous immediate policies to deal with France's out-of-control refugee crisis,
the time has come to get rid of all the arrogant people who want to dictate to the population what they should do. I am the candidate for the people. And it's an appeal to all the sincere patriots, wherever they come from, whatever their origin, whatever they voted for in the first round. I invite them all to join us and to abandon old-fashioned quarrels and to concentrate on what is the superior interest of our country. That was really essential. And that's what's at play, the survival of France. So I call upon them to unite behind our project of renewal, and they will be our brothers.
Macron walks a vague line on the refugee invasion, even offering a foolish culture pass in the vein of Merkel's policies, which have clearly not worked and only served to fragment cultural integration and its failure to stave off a jihad mindset that has now been recently emboldened by Recep Erdogan's recent establishment of executive power to usher in his revolving door caliphate of terror into Europe. Populism, a shot of antibiotics into the arm of globalism, is still gaining traction, and the globalists are horrified.
We want to avoid going back to nationalism, populism, extremism, which is taking us down the wrong path.
This is why Europe doesn't work. This is why we have populism, because Europe is weak with populism. You're turning a blind eye to what actually happening in these countries. We have hunters organizing some safaris, to sort of hunt down the migrants. We have all this speech of racism, of hate, of xenophobia. And what you say on TV and what Europe says on TV is, oh, actually, they are good partners. It's okay. No, it's not.
The far-right leader, Marine Le Pen, doing very well and ultimately winning. She's campaigned for France leaving the euro. Would that trigger a financial crisis?
It would certainly entail major disorder and a risk of dislocation.
But what I do know is that if Marine Le Pen were to win, and whilst the odds look to be against that, the odds looked against Brexit and the odds looked against Trump, and we're living in a whole new different world, if she did win, then it would be the end of the European project.
The enemies of populism want the concerns of rational individuals reined in. Will the globalist French-owned media lay into Le Pen, as American media did and continues to do, to Donald Trump? And will former President Barack Obama crawl out from under his rock and offer his support of globalist Macron's hidden socialist platform? It looks as though the battle between Le Pen and Macron will not disappoint. John Bound for Infowars.com.
We are back live on the Alex Jones Show in this second hour, and I'm delighted to be joined by our guest. Of course, we had the French election yesterday. Marine Le Pen through to the second round. Macron, the establishment candidate, winning. Our guest is Tony Tommes. You can find him on Twitter at Tony, Thommes. He is a National Front candidate for the French Parliament, and he's in South Korea, actually, where it's very late, so we really appreciate him taking the time. Tony, welcome to the show.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Now, of course, Marine Le Pen is through to the second round. Many people said she needed to come first to build that momentum and that Macron needed to be knocked out. Of course, Macron, according to the polls, will beat her in the runoff, according to many people. How does Le Pen overturn that deficit in the next 2 weeks? Is it possible for her to come from behind and beat Macron?
Well, I think she needs to unite the people that believe in sovereignty, that believe that we need to control our borders, that we need to control immigration, because, in fact, there's a majority of people in France that believe that. The problem is that even though they believe that immigration should be reduced, they're still voting for establishment parties because of the media propaganda about how the National Front would not be able to rule the country, and all of this kind of bullshit reasons, to be honest. So I think we need to make them understand that they need to vote for what they believe in. And we've already won the battle for the minds. We've already won the battle of ideas. because I've got a poll there from 2013, and you have 74% of people, of French people, that think that Islam is not compatible with the values of French society. 74%. And that's across the political parties. Even centre-right, centre-left, even far left. You've got 59 people on the far left who believe that Islam is not compatible with the French values. So I think we just need to get these people to vote for us, really.
We even had a poll recently where I think it was over 65% in France said they wanted a complete halt on all Islamic immigration. Absolutely incredible numbers, yet still they're voting for Macron in such large figures. I want to ask you about this report. I don't know if you saw this. 500,000 people living outside of France, you know, who would be likely to not vote for Marine Le Pen, received 2 ballots. This was reported about a week ago. The police said they're not going to investigate until after the election. The government says the same thing. Do you think this could have affected the outcome of the vote? I mean, Macron won by 2%. Do you think that this was an issue here?
Well, I think this is more a reflection on the incompetence of the French state rather than anything malicious, to be honest. We've had things like that in the past. It's something that, to my ear, sounds very, very much like the French administration. I think if the result for the second round is extremely close, then we'll have to get this investigated and maybe the election overruled or things like that. But to be honest, this is just the French administration being the French administration, I think, unfortunately.
That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned before, you know, people have these concerns about Islamic immigration, but again, there's this notion in the French media with the propaganda that's being broadcast that Marine Le Pen, that National Front can't govern. You know, why is the media still trying to portray Marine Le Pen as, you know, this dangerous far-right fringe radical when she now has the support of over 21% of the French people? You know, at what point do they have to acknowledge that our views are held by huge numbers of rational, normal-thinking people?
Absolutely. I think this is just because it's the only weapon they have left. I mean, I remember a few years ago, even 10 years ago, when our platform, our manifesto, still had things that we could be attacked on. There were elements in the manifesto that many people didn't agree with, so the media could have picked up on that. But these days, the French people are basically in complete agreement with us on most subjects. So the only thing they have left, the only thing the media has left to attack us and to keep us away from power is really to demonize us and to make us look like radicals or a fringe party, which we are really not, or not anymore at least.
That's exactly it. I mean, you can't continue that narrative for much longer when you have literally, what, 1/5 of the country. A lot of people didn't vote, you have to remember, but over 21% of the French people voting for Marine Le Pen. Also, something that I picked up on today, according to a report, Le Pen was second behind Mélenchon in the black majority overseas territories in places like Reunion, Guadeloupe, Mayotte, Guyane. I mean, if she's coming in second amongst majority black voters, that suggests that they're not really concerned about this racist characteristic that the media has tried to throw at her, right?
Absolutely. And this is a very interesting statistic, because in French Guiana, the reason why so many people voted for her, she got 24% of the vote in French Guiana. The reason they voted for her is that they are fed up with immigration. French Guiana is landlocked in South America, and well, not landlocked, but it's in South America with many territorial borders with other countries. And they are fed up with illegal immigration, just crossing into French Guiana to take on French welfare benefits. And this is just something that appeals to people across the different ethnicity and across the different origins. People need to have borders to protect themselves wherever they come from. And it's the same thing in other French overseas territory, which are completely overrun by illegal immigration. And of course, the French government doesn't want to do anything about it, because this means that they would have to change things that are regulated by the EU, for example, because you can't deny refugees the right to put an application in your country, and if someone is supposedly in distress on a boat that's sinking, you've got to rescue them, you've got to take them into your country, etc. And the people in this overseas territory are just seeing the reality of things, and they are just fed up with immigration.
That's interesting. Do you know, actually, I want to touch on this. Do you know how the people in Calais voted? Because obviously they've had the massive problem with the migrant camp. Now you've got migrants coming back to Calais in certain numbers because the left-wing groups, the NGOs are out there feeding them, so they're enticing them to come back. How did the people of Calais vote? Do you know those statistics?
I don't know the exact figure about Calais, but the general region of Calais and of Western France, unsurprisingly, really voted very much for the centrist candidate, because historically they are a region that has very little immigration. So in fact, Calais is a bit of a high-profile thing, but really the region in general doesn't have many immigrants. And so apart from the people that are living in the very near proximity to the camps in Calais, the people in Western France and northwestern Western France and Brittany, they're not really exposed to immigration. And so they don't actually believe that it's such a big issue. Whereas the rest of France will have to live with this population and live with an Islam that's more and more taking over territories. They understand that the problem is real. So Calais is a bit of a strange situation, because the people living very near the camps will have voted for the Front National, but the region in general will not.
Now, it's interesting, again, I talked about it earlier, we had the reports last week of some of the Calais migrants returning to that area. I mean, just explain to the audience, of course, Britain has very, generous welfare system, generous benefit system. Is that the only reason they're trying to get to Britain, is because the French welfare system is nowhere near as generous? Is that the case?
Oh, no, I think it is even more generous, in fact. But I think the reason is that they have family ties with the UK, because these immigrants are mainly from ex-UK colonies or countries that have historically very high immigration to the UK. So they've got communities established there that they don't have in France. And we also have countries that have ties with France that would not immigrate to the UK. You've got countries like Mali, or for Belgium, you've got the Congo, or mainly ex-colonies, because they've got established ghettos really in France and in the UK. They tend to stick to the countries where they've got family ties and communities.
And of course, many of them can speak English, but they can't speak French, which is another big reason. Let's talk about Paris, because, you've had 6 massive terror attacks in the last 3 years in Paris alone, yet just 5% of people living in Paris voted for Marine Le Pen. You had 38% voted for Macron. Are they happy to just continue living with terrorism, as Macron said a few days ago? Are they just happy to continue business as usual?
I think they're just in complete denial. The people in Paris, in France, are seen as a bit of a disconnected elite, maybe even more than the people in London for the people in the UK. They are very, very strange people. They're completely disconnected from the realities of immigration. And that's mainly because Paris is an extremely expensive city to live in. And if you don't earn 3 or 4 times the minimum wage, there is no way you can rent even a studio apartment in Paris. So this makes it a bit of a ghetto for people who have high income and who can protect themselves from immigration. So there is this threat of terrorism in concert halls and the Champs-Élysées and all of that, but that mainly affects tourists or people who come from outside of Paris to maybe enjoy an evening in Paris. The people who are living there, they're living in gated communities, they take their car with chauffeurs to their workplace, and they don't feel threatened by that.
It's very much the same situation in Britain with, the people who supported Brexit and the people who wanted to remain. The pro-immigration people, including politicians, celebrities, all tend to live in the whitest areas of London possible with the least immigrants, places like Richmond and Hampstead, which are 95, 98% white, which is very unusual for London, of course, which has a huge immigrant population. We're going to go to a break now. We're going to come back with Tony Temes to talk more about Macron, what he stands for, and the runoff coming up on May the 7th. It is populism versus globalism. Once again, this is the Alex Jones Show live. Breaking news at Infowars.com. Stay tuned. We'll be back. We're live on the Alex Jones Show. There's a breaking news story out of Dallas. This is FoxNews.com, 2 people reportedly shot at Dallas office building. SWAT team is on the scene, so we're following that story closely to see if anything comes of that. Again, a shooting in Dallas at an office building. But we're talking to Tony Temes. He is a National Front candidate. Before I go on, Tony, just explain, you're running for Parliament for the National Front, correct?
Yes, I am. I'm running in the constituency for Northern Europe expats. So in the French Parliament, we've got constituencies for expats all around the world. And my constituency has the UK, Ireland, Scandinavian countries, and the Baltic states. So the French people in these countries can vote for their MP, and I'm hoping that they choose an MP to represent the notions of sovereignty and to really make France great again. Because if Macron is elected, unfortunately, we will need a strong opposition in the National Assembly.
And does that vote take place on May the 7th, or is that after May the 7th?
No, it's on June the 4th.
Okay, we'll look out for that. Yeah, I'm going to read you a quote talking of Macron. This is what Nigel Farage said yesterday. He said, quote, "Macron's speech was vacuous nonsense. Other than backing the status quo, he says nothing." Now, Tony, you know, if Francois Hollande was so unpopular that he didn't even bother to run, why are large numbers of French people set to vote for someone who's almost indistinguishable from him?
He managed to make himself look new, and to be honest, this was politically an incredible achievement. He managed to run on the same platform that Hollande ran on. He was a minister of Hollande, an economy minister for many years, but somehow he managed to make people think that he was a new face of French politics and that he could bring change. And it's a bit of a unique situation where you have a country that is majority anti-immigration, that is majority suspicious towards Islam, that is voting for a candidate that is from the majority that was there before, and that they hated so much. So I think he just managed to market himself. He's a man that worked in marketing, and he's a man that has experience in banking. I think he's just very good at PR. And the French people for the second round need to realize that there is something beyond PR, and that they need to read the manifesto and really think hard about, do they agree with what Macron stands for?
There you see a headline out of Bloomberg. Le Pen camp attacks frontrunner Macron as oligarch's candidate. I was reading that his entire campaign was basically cooked up 3-4 years ago inside the Élysée Palace, that they knew Hollande was going to be unpopular, that he wouldn't be able to win again. Is that true, that they actually had planned this kind of fake populist campaign from within the bureaucracy several years ago?
It's very possible. And if that's the case, really Hollande pulled a very successful trick, because he knew he was not going to get elected again because he's too unpopular, and honestly and objectively he's done a terrible job leading the country. But he wanted to stay in power, even indirectly, with someone he knew and he could control. And I think it's very possible, it's very likely, and it would be very much like Hollande, to have created this character out of Macron, and to have created sort of fake opposition within the government about Hollande being more moderate on reforms, economic reforms, than Macron, to have shaped this character as some sort of even anti-establishment, even though he is the most establishment figure we've ever had in French politics. So it's very possible they've tried to do that, and if they have tried, they have unfortunately succeeded for the first round.
Yeah, we had an article up earlier, which was James Delingpole. Manchurian candidate Macron is France's Obama. And it's very much that kind of thing, isn't it? But again, they sold him on the fact that he wasn't a member of either major political party. So people have, I thought they were, you know, the polls showed a couple of months ago some of his support was slipping. It didn't seem as energetic, and that the people were finally figuring out that he is the establishment candidate. But I guess it's the propaganda so strong that National Front could never run a government that a lot of people are just voting out of fear for what, you know, better the devil they know, I guess, right?
Yes, and the media were completely unashamedly biased toward Macron. It was, I mean, I try to be objective, and I don't always label the media as completely biased and all of that. But in this case, it really was. It was so obvious. And we had cases where journalist unions were actually calling out the French media about the propaganda, because they felt themselves that they were not being professional in covering this election. So it's just been incredible, the amount of propaganda that was there. And just on the establishment candidate theme,
we got 10 seconds. We'll get back. Just hang on. Next segment coming up. Big, long segment with Tony Temess. This is The Alex Jones Show Live. We'll be back. Infowars.com. We're live on The Alex Jones Show talking to Tony Temess, who is running there for the National Front in the French Parliament. I'm going to read this out of James Dellingpole's article about Emmanuel Macron, the establishment candidate. He's making the argument that there won't be a repeat of Brexit, that Le Pen won't win. He writes, it won't happen yet in France, a country whose political system has more in common with Putin's Russia or Erdogan's Turkey or some African hellhole with a president for life than it does with liberal democracies. That is, Emmanuel Macron is going to win this presidency because it was decided long ago by France's establishment that he was the least worst option of the candidates available. The fact that he is a hollow man, a slippery snake oil salesman with a winning smile and nice suits, sounds like the French Tony Blair, who will do almost nothing seriously to address France's massive social and economic problems, is a help, not a hindrance. Emmanuel Macron is the left-leaning French establishment's Manchurian candidate. So, Tony, people like James Dellingpole are convinced that Le Pen has no chance whatsoever of overturning this. Does she have a chance? What does she need to do in the next 2 weeks? And before the break, you were finishing up your comments about the other establishment candidate. Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically regarding the establishment candidate, the Socialist Party, so the party that François Hollande is a member of, did have a candidate, but it was really a placeholder candidate because he only got 6% of the vote, whereas normally the Socialist Party gets about 20% of the vote. So they managed to pull this trick where they had just a token candidate to make it look like Macron was an independent, but really he was the actual socialist candidate. And regarding what Marine Le Pen needs to do to win, she needs to unite the people that think that France should remain France and that we should control immigration, our borders, and keep our sovereignty. It's going to be a uphill battle because Macron is seen as a safe choice, but really he isn't, because we are in very troubled times. Terrorism is striking France over and over again. And if we have 5 years of Macron, or God forbid 10 years, I'm really scared about what would happen to our country. And it could go very, very badly with terrorism.
That's what I was discussing earlier. I mean, again, you've had 21 jihadist attacks since 2015, since Charlie Hebdo. That can't continue. It looks like it's getting worse. You know, whenever a terror attack does happen in France, people just roll their eyes at this point. I mean, people forget about it within 2 days and it's gone, right? The incident on Friday. I mean, everybody's forgotten about that now. It could start happening every single week. But, you know, as people like Ayaan Hirsi Ali state, it's not just, you know, the terrorist attacks. It's not just people dying. It's you know, the relentless march through the institutions. It's the fact that these immigrant populations get in these Islamic ghettos, they congregate, they don't assimilate, and it causes massive social problems, and that problem seems to be spreading. So people understand, you know, people don't say, well, you know, thousands of people die in car accidents every day. Terrorism is not an existential threat, but it's mainly the societal threat of Sharia law. It's creeping Sharia law. We see that in the UK, and we see that increasingly in France, correct?
Absolutely, and you've got ghettos all around Paris and even within inner Paris, where you've got majority Muslim population, you've got majority immigrant population, and these are parts of France that the French people themselves say they don't feel like they belong there. And you have this movement where they just fleeing further and further away from city centres. And if you look at a map of the results for the first round of the election in France, it's very clear that you got the city centre where the very rich live in gated communities and the immigrants live in social housing, which is all for Macron on both sides. And you've got the outer part of the city with cheaper housing, where the French just have to escape, because it has become an absolute nightmare to live there. And this argument about the number of people who die in car crashes, I hear that a lot. And people don't realize that car crashes do not pose an existential threat to our civilization. France will still be France if we have 600 people dying because of car crashes instead of 500. It's a tragedy each time. But Islam and terrorism is a different nature. It's something that poses a threat to the existence of our institution. And for example, 24% of women voted for Le Pen, whereas only 21 voted for Macron. So she actually won the women vote. And that's because I think women start to understand that if they want to be able to be in the streets freely, and if they want to be able to have an education and live wherever they want in a safe environment, they need to vote for Le Pen.
Now, you mentioned there the women's vote, which she performed very well in. Another interesting thing before the election, which I saw, they did a poll and found that, and I don't know whether these numbers played out in the actual vote, but they found 39% of young people aged 18 to 24 were going to vote for Marine Le Pen. That is in huge contrast to something like Brexit in the UK, where it was mainly older people, the younger people voted to remain. What's driving that huge surge of youthful energy behind Marine Le Pen's campaign?
Well, I think Britain is a bit of the odd one out, because if you look at Austria with the FPO party, it's the same thing. It's young people driving this movement. I'm 24 myself, and it's because we had to live through what the previous generation built for us, which was a society of high immigration, of low income, and of just complete chaos. So we don't have the money to protect ourselves from that. Whereas the older generation, they can live in gated communities, they can live far away from cities because they are retired. We have to live through that every day, and that's what energizes this movement in France, in Austria, and even in the US.
Yeah, I was reading about it, and they basically asked these people, and they said, look, we're never going to meet the standard of living that our parents have accomplished over the past generation or so. It's just not there. Is it true you've got 25%, 24% youth unemployment in France?
Yes, it's the case, and it's fairly low if you compare to Spain, which has 50% youth unemployment. So it is extremely bleak prospects for the young people. And even if you manage to get a job, even if you manage to get a decent income, in the end, you still suffer from the fact that your country doesn't really look like your country anymore. And especially if you are within the active population, you've got to go to work every day, you've got to take public transport, crowded, you've got to live in inner cities, which are becoming more and more expensive, or you've got to move further and further away from the city. So immigration is having a very real, concrete impact on your life every day if you are part of this active population. And I think that's why we're polling so high in this in this part of the population. And actually, our best score is with people aged 25 to 49. So the people who are going to work every day, who are commuting, who are paying their taxes, and they see all of the other people, a lot of them immigrants, living in social housing, getting welfare benefits, and the state not really trying to crack down on that at all.
Now, I wonder with Paris, have you heard of an author? He's a big French author, Michel Houellebecq. You've heard of him, right? He wrote a book, I think it was about 2 years ago, called Submission. And I think the plot of this book was the leftist government in France or in Paris has to form an alliance with an actual Islamist government to pander to cater for, and to kind of, you know, calm down this growing Islamist resentment. That seems to be moving quite closer to being accurate. Do you foresee, if this mass immigration continues, in 10, 15 years' time, there will be a situation where an actual Islamist style, like Turkey, Erdogan style government has to form, the left has to form some kind of coalition just to try and keep control of the Islamist resentment that's dominating Paris right now? Do you see that as a potential future nightmare scenario in 10 years or so?
Well, the scary bit is already happening in local politics. So around Paris and around big cities, you've got these majority Muslim ghettos, and the local politicians are generally people from very wealthy backgrounds, and they just get sent there. They hand out a lot of money to community leaders and to fake charities to keep control of the city. And we had corruption scandals regarding these territories. We had plenty of fraud issues, voting fraud. So it's already happening in local politics. You see this hand-to-hand approach between the left and the Islamic communities in this part of France. And unfortunately, it's very likely that, as you say, it might move into national politics. And maybe 10 years from now, we will have the same kind of thing that we have in outer Paris, in the Élysée Palace, which would be really the end of France, I think.
We've talked about it before, this alliance between the left and Islamists. You literally had, during the vote yesterday, I don't know if you saw the pictures, members of this Femem group, this like Antifa feminist group, physically trying to block people voting for Marine Le Pen, who would be the first female president of France, and they call themselves feminists, yet they're aligning with the people who are apologists for that very belief system, you know, which treats women as cattle, basically, Sharia law, acid attacks, female genital mutilation. They're acting as apologists for that while attacking the one candidate who has actual policies to deal with that, to defend women. As he said, huge numbers of women voted for Marine Le Pen, yet these so-called feminists actually tried to block that. What does that say about modern feminism?
Well, I think it says that it only represents itself because, at least in France, the women were clever enough to understand that their interest was best served by Marine Le Pen because she won the popular vote among women. So I think this groups, they only there to get their attention from the media, and thankfully in France at least, they are only a handful of people, and they get a lot of media attention, but they are absolutely nothing in the general public. Nobody's following them. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody supports them. And the actual people of France and the women are supporting Marine Le Pen in very large numbers.
Now, what do you think about Fillon? Because he was, of course, the Conservative candidate. He basically fell flat. Do you think that the establishment Conservative wing in France will be largely irrelevant now for years to come, given Fillon's failure?
Well, it has to be, because we had this system that was just bound to fail, because we had the national right, which is us, and you had the traditional conservatives, which is the Fillon's party, and they just refused to form any sort of agreement with us. We've tried in local elections, we've reached out to them, we've tried to give them seats, etc. But they just treat us like we're some sort of fringe party or extremists. But they've got to realize that if Macron is elected in 2 weeks, we will be the main opposition. And if they remain as a single party that doesn't want to form any coalition with us, they're just going to become even more irrelevant. And within the party, for the first time, you start seeing tension between the people who are very much part of the establishment and who say, oh, I will definitely vote for Macron. I think all the conservative people of France should vote for Macron. And you've got the more close to the people side of the party that is starting to say, well, maybe we shouldn't ask people to vote for the candidate that we campaigned against for the past 6 months, because this just doesn't make sense at all. And so the party might very well split after this election. And I'm hoping that the Front National can be the new party on the right, because that would just make a lot more sense, and it would just enable us to win again. We'll never win if the right is divided into two equal-sized parties.
And did Fillon endorse Macron, right? Or hasn't that not happened? Yeah, he's endorsed the establishment candidate, the centre-left candidate. Absolutely incredible. We got a few minutes left. We're going to talk about your AMA, but I just want to move on. You're in South Korea right now, and we appreciate that because it's really late at night there. Of course, we've had the build-up of tension with North Korea. We've had threats of a 6th nuclear test. Obviously, if there was a conflict, North Korea would probably try to attack Seoul, which is where you are right now. I just want to get a sense of the mood of the people living in Seoul. We've had reports that some of them were sending panicked text messages to each other a few weeks ago. What sense do you get of the mood in Seoul? Is it quite animated, or is it calm right now?
It's very calm. I think people are used to this kind of tensions. It happens every every 2 or 3 years, there's this kind of peak of tension, and then it just calms down. People are a lot more excited about the presidential election because, you know, they had their president impeached, and I remember I was at the office when the impeachment happened, and a very rare sighting in Korea is that you saw people watching streaming of the impeachment case at work on their work computer. And when the president was impeached, they all cheered and they all celebrated. So I think that's the main thing that's animating them at the moment. And the tension is a bit overblown in the international media, or at least the local people just don't care that much.
Yeah, they're used to it by now. That makes a lot of sense. Final couple of minutes, Tony. You've got a big AMA coming up with Reddit. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I'm basically trying to get to the core of the establishment, of the people who think that the Front National is a French party, and I'm trying to tell them that no, we're just normal people. I'm an engineer. I work for a big company in Cambridge in the UK where I live. I'm just a normal guy, and there was this opportunity to run for parliament, so I just thought, I'm going to run for what I believe in. And these people are on Reddit, on Our Europe. They are genuinely convinced that we are some sort of extreme right party, that we're all marginals, and that we may be dangerous for democracy. I don't even want to try to convince them to vote for me, because most of them are not even French. But I just want to expose them to the reality of the Front National, which is just normal people who believe in borders, in sovereignty, and in controlled immigration, getting together and trying to get that into French Parliament.
And that's coming up. Give us the date for the Reddit. That's Reddit Europe, correct?
Yeah, so that's this Saturday at 5 p.m. British time.
All right, sounds good. And people can find you on Twitter. Give out the Twitter handle.
So that's Tony, Tony, Thomas, THOMMES.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Tony Thomas talking about Marine Le Pen and the populist revolution sweeping France. Tony, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. There goes Tony Thomas. We're going to flick back to some news here in the final minute of this segment. Again, talking about what's happening in Europe. Reuters reports number of migrant suspects in Germany surged in 2016. We get called conspiracy theorists every time we bring this subject up of migrants being linked to crime explosions. Well, the Interior Minister of Germany, Thomas de Maizière, said crimes committed by refugees had, quote, increased disproportionately since last year. So last year they had a 5.7% migrant crime rate. It's gone up to 8.7%, I believe, this year. Again, massive spike. They can't cover it up any longer. The media tried to cover it up. Now it's outflowing at the seams, and they just can't bury the truth any longer of the huge social problems that this migrant crisis is causing in Europe. We'll be back with more news after the break. It's the Alex Jones Show Live, Infowars.com. We are live on the Alex Jones Show. Tommy Robinson coming up in the next hour to talk about all his recent activities, and they are varied. Some very interesting videos coming up. Going to dip back into the news here in a second on North Korea, but we have to tell you right now about this amazing discount. The first time ever this product has been on discount at InfoWarsStore.com. It is Caveman True Paleo Formula, 20% off for the first time ever. 20% off on our Caveman True Paleo Formula at InfoWarsStore.com while supplies last. Caveman fuses super high-quality bone broth with more than 7 different primal superfoods. It's all in this amazing tasting formula. 5-star independent reviews. Supports healthy muscles, fights free radicals, and so much more. It has the turmeric root, the chaga mushroom, bee pollen, bone broth. It really is the ultimate in true paleo nutrition. See why. Hundreds of listeners have given Caveman 5 stars on InfoWarsStore.com through our verified third-party review platform and experience the benefits for yourself. Secure it right now. 20% off. First time ever we've had a discount on Caveman True Paleo Formula at InfoWarsStore.com. That goes to support the growth, the survival of this network. You've seen what they're doing to people like Bill O'Reilly, people like Sean Hannity now. All the attacks are personal. All the attacks are financial. They can't compete with us on a level playing field. They don't have the better argument, so they try to sabotage our very foundation. Well, you're our foundation, and you've not deserted us. You've supported us at every turn by getting the products at InfoWarsStore.com. 20% off Caveman True Paleo Formula for a limited time only. Secure your bottle now. InfoWarsStore.com. Final couple of minutes in this segment. Let's switch back to some North Korea news because we were talking about it with the guest there. He was in South Korea, in Seoul. This is out of Zero Hedge. An increasingly worried Chinese president tells Trump to exercise restraint over North Korea. Now, bearing in mind, over the weekend, we had North Korea warning China of, quote, catastrophic consequences to bilateral relations if they continued this approach of trying to tamp down North Korea's aggression, their belligerence. Well, hours later, which I found interesting, China came out in their official Global Times mouthpiece and said that they won't tolerate regime change in North Korea, which has been talked about in the background. Remember the reports about SEAL Team 6 being sent in to take out Kim Jong-un? There were rumors about that. There were discussions about that. Well, according to an official government mouthpiece, which is the Global Times, it's the voice of the Chinese Communist Party, they said, quote, Beijing would never sit back and watch foreign military forces overthrow the Pyongyang regime. So they came out forcefully over the weekend and said they're not going to sit back and do nothing if the US, if the Trump administration sends in those special forces to try and take out Kim Jong-un, which there were reports of about a week ago. Now, Zero Hedge reports France and the European Union populist wave may be fixed for now, but geopolitical concerns remain, as was made clear last night when during a phone call late Sunday between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, the North Korean neighbor called for all sides to exercise restraint as Japan coordinated exercises with a U.S. aircraft carrier strike group headed for Korean waters. So China is still increasingly concerned about this, but again, they've come out officially over the weekend and said, we will not sit back if there's an invasion force that goes into North Korea, if there's any attempt at regime change. Absolutely huge statement. We'll be back with more news coming up. Alex Jones Show Live. Don't go away.
Every day again, we suffer from Islam. Attack after attack. Yesterday, Paris for the umpteenth time. Earlier, Stockholm, Nice, Berlin, Brussels, London, Madrid, New York, Amsterdam. Last summer, sometimes twice a day. Everywhere and over again. Always again, innocent people are being killed. Police officer, priests, pregnant women, people walking with a family in the streets, children, grandmas, fathers and mothers. Everyone is a target. This month, I will be under police protection for exactly 12.5 years. Because of my criticism of Islam, I am on the death list of Al-Qaeda and other Islamic terror groups. But today, we are all on the Islamic death list. And political leaders and the media are still ignoring the problem. They want the citizens to believe that Islam is a peace-loving religion and that there are only a few Islamic extremists who are ruining everything for everyone. What a lie. What a charade. I tell you, do not let yourselves be fooled anymore. It is time to listen to the truth. And the truth is that Islam is not a peace-loving religion. It's an evil ideology that has ensconced itself as a life-threatening monster in our society. An ideology opposed to freedom, which claims that women, Jews, gays, Christians, apostates and non-Muslims are inferior. Based on a book, the Quran, which is even worse and more anti-Semitic than Mein Kampf. with a leading role for a deranged fake prophet called Muhammad, who slaughtered Jewish tribes, raped a young girl, and is still an example for Muslims all over the world who worship him. Islam is a totalitarian ideology that is intolerant to the bone, preaches hatred and propagates violence. And it is also a lie that only a handful of Muslims find violence acceptable. Research from the University of Amsterdam shows that as many as 11% of Dutch Muslims find it acceptable to use violence in the name of Islam. That is more than 100,000 Muslims in the Netherlands, twice the number of soldiers in the Dutch army. And no less than 2/3 of Muslims in the Netherlands find Islamic rules more important than our secular laws. We witness gays being beaten in the Netherlands with bolt cutters, swimming pools being terrorized by Muslim youth, Dutch women and girls groped, spat upon, assaulted even. Moroccan youth make many streets and neighborhoods in Dutch villages and cities unsafe and are heavily overrepresented in crime statistics. The Netherlands are no longer the Netherlands. We are being colonized. Our population is being replaced by people with norms and values that are not ours, by a culture of hatred and violence. But this is our country, and we have to take it back. The Netherlands must be ours again. Meanwhile, mass immigration goes on. And by the end of this century, the population of Africa will quadruple from 1 to 4 billion. We will be flooded with even more fortune seekers who will often bring their Islam along. But those who saw Islam will harvest Sharia law. We will lose our freedom and the Netherlands will become an Islamic state. And the political elite has first transformed the Netherlands from an independent country into a province of the European Union, and now it has nothing at all to prevent us from becoming a province of Africa at the end of this century. People in the Netherlands, please wake up. People in Europe, wake up. People everywhere in the West, wake up. It is time to cry out loud that we no longer accept it, that the Netherlands is our country, that Europe is our continent, that the West is ours, that we want to remain a free people, that we want to preserve our own culture and identity, and do not want mass immigration anymore, more open borders, no imams, jihadists and mosques anymore, no Islamic terror anymore, that we are sick and tired of Islam, that we must de-Islamize our beautiful country so that we and our children and grandchildren can grow up and live in a free Netherlands.
We are back live on the Alex Jones Show, and I'm delighted to be joined once again by the author of Enemy of the State. He is Tommy Robinson at T Robinson New Era on Twitter. Of course, he's been doing a lot of great work for The Rebel recently, which we're going to get into. Tommy, you appear to have staged an impromptu Draw Mohammed cartoon contest there. What's going on?
That's what I was going to be like. Oh, you're right, Paul, you just interrupted.
Mohammed, tell us about your creation there.
Our creation, we're just we're in a hotel waiting room. We've just come to do this quick talk. We're travelling up north and we're just having a bit of fun.
Now, you've been following the French election, obviously. It's Macron versus Le Pen. It's what many people predicted. France, specifically Paris, has been hit with 6 jihadist terror attacks in the last 3 years, yet just 5% of people in Paris voted for Marine Le Pen. 38% voted for Macron. Are they happy just continuing to live with terrorism, you know, as Macron said before the vote? Are they just happy to continue with business as usual?
It's insanity. And the worrying thing is, I hope Le Pen can do it this time. And I keep gauging that when it will happen is in 4 years' time, when we have the elections of Holland at the same time as Germany. Now, because of Theresa May, there'll be elections across Europe in 4 years' time. But the worrying thing is that the new generations or the younger generations think this is normal. Because as they're growing up in it, terrorism will become part of everyday life because that's all they've known and all they've seen. Because for the last 4 or 5 years, across Europe, it's just terror, terror, terror. For the next 4 years, I think when you look at the arrest rate, they go up 60% a year across Europe. The attacks are intensifying. They're getting worse. They're getting bigger. They're getting badder. So it's worrying for the next. I think that the changing point will be the election in 4 years' time. But yeah, it's insanity, and the Paris view mindset seems to be similar to London.
The encouraging thing for me, as we were talking about earlier, is the polls showed before the vote 39% of young people aged 18 to 24 were going to vote for Marine Le Pen. She's got this huge, energetic, youthful movement behind her. You know, it's partly because of the youth unemployment there. They've got 24% youth unemployment. But again, that's tied to the large numbers of immigrants they're bringing in, taking the jobs. They can no longer achieve the living standard that their parents had attained for generations beforehand. So we're seeing that in France. We're not really seeing it in the UK, but I think that's something encouraging to say that in 4 or 5 years' time, if Le Pen doesn't win this time, if there's anything left of France in that time, that we could have a positive result in the next presidential election, if not this one.
That's what I'd be looking at. I think everything will change over the next 4 years. Things are going to get a lot worse. I think that's when Le Pen, that's when Wilders, that's when Swedish Democrats, that's when parties across Europe, one of them's going to come to power. Now, Hollande said that a vote for Le Pen is a vote for civil war. Now, I'd agree that when a leader gets into a country of Europe that tries to enforce the laws that are already there against a hostile Islamic community, it will spark mass civil unrest because they won't allow them. So at some point, there is going to be huge civil disorder. But whether it be a vote for Le Pen now to try and sort that problem out, or wait 10 or 15 years until we can't say no, until Europe is gone, or as people know Europe's gone, I put everything for the next 4 years, and I think we're going to have a hell of a lot of trouble, unfortunately, a hell of a lot of murder. I think since 2015, I saw 238 French citizens have been murdered in the name of Islam. And it's going to get a lot worse. When you're talking about problems in Paris, I looked, and there was a court case last week where 28 Muslim men have been charged for kidnapping a Jewish man off the street, and they had him for 3 weeks. Now, when you read the details of this case, you wouldn't think that could happen on the streets of a European city. You would not believe it. And something we're actually working on now for Rebel, and there was a Jewish man in London who was attacked upwards of 300 times. God bless him, he died 2 weeks ago. Yeah, he's now gone. When we've gone through and we're detailing what happened to him, how it happened to him, who he turned to, who he begged for help, all these crimes against him, which are horrific, it's an unbelievable story. When I tell people this story, and we've got all the documentation to go through with the documentary we're making to show what's happened to him, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what this man went through and what happened to him, and the failure, similar to what happened with Rotherham in the UK, where no one wanted to deal with it, they allowed it to happen. With this Jewish man, no one wanted to admit that that a Jewish man can't walk through the streets of an Islamic ghetto in London without being persecuted, targeted, beaten, violently assaulted, and at one point raped by a Muslim gang. Now, this story will be something that I think is going to shock so many people when this is put together, because I've got footage. I knew this man. I met this man 4 years ago, and I've got footage of me and him talking for years about all these issues where he's crying, he's emotional, and he's begging. And he's now dead, and he's been persecuted to death. So these sort of problems that people really need to see are happening, whereas they're hidden. And at times, people just don't believe it. They don't believe it. And until I saw this case in Paris this week, which was exactly the same as what's happened to this gentleman in London, Israel Shalom.
What's incredible to me, Tommy, is the judicial system is accommodating this invasive, intolerant culture that we've invited in. We saw a story a few days ago. There was a Turkish migrant in Germany who had raped a teenager, and he got off because, in one sense, he didn't understand the word no, that was a sign to stop raping a teenager. And in the rest of the article, which was in German, they actually said that in his culture, and they used the word culture, rape is just rough sex, and he doesn't really know the difference. He got off prison time because in his culture, it's acceptable to rape teenagers. You know, we had the guy in the swimming pool, I think it was in Austria, who raped a young boy, and he was surprised that the police even showed up because he was just like, well, why is this a problem? It's perfectly acceptable in my country. That's incredible.
He was actually, after raping that 10-year-old boy, when the police got there, he was on the diving board.
Yeah, it was just second nature to him, right?
He was on the diving board. And exactly what you just said, that happened in Leicester, in the UK. A Muslim man had rape, because it's rape for a child. The child was 13. What he said was that he was completely unaware, because he'd only been schooled in an Islamic madrasa, completely unaware of the law and the legal age limit in the UK. He lived in the UK his whole life. But he's been brought up in an Islamic ghetto with Islamic doctrine, believing that the Sharia, when a girl starts her periods, is fair game. So yeah, this is happening across Europe, and you're right. And even we see many times where children are coming in with adults. You'll have 13 or 14-year-old young girls who are married to men, because that's part of Islamic culture. And we're seeing that it's being legalised because they're being allowed to live with them as refugees. We're legalising child brutality. We're legalising child cruelty, everything. It's worrying.
Now, I think, Tommy, they've gone from denial. They've gone from denying this is happening. We had Cologne. We had the assaults at the Swedish music festivals. We've had basically incidents on a weekly basis, if not, daily basis at this point. They've gone from denying it to just kind of saying it's part of tolerance to embrace this and to just accept it. The women who were raped on trains in Germany and Sweden, they say, well, we didn't report it to police because these people have had a hard time getting here, whether they're from Syria or not. Of course, we know most of the refugees aren't. But they've gone from denial, because it's so obvious, it's so in their face, to just saying part of tolerance is to tolerate and embrace being sexually abused, children being sexually abused. You had Tim Pool, who went to Sweden, got kicked out of a migrant suburb. He also went to Paris, and he was interviewing an American woman who lives in Paris, and she said, yeah, the migrants will not just catcall us, not just verbally abuse us, they will run down the street after us, try to expose our breasts. But then she said, oh, but, we have to be tolerant. How has it got into these people's minds that tolerance includes tolerating being sexually abused?
I'd say in this that there's three stages to it. There's disbelief, disappointment, and acceptance. And we're all in acceptance. Or we're not, but many are in acceptance. Acceptance that this is how it is. This is how it's going to be. This is what's happening. And, for example, I went to a court case last week, 28 Muslim men. 28 of them, they're in court for raping. There was 120 young children identified. Only 20 wanted to come forward and go through the stress and the chaos that it's already caused to their lives. That's 28 men in the town of Huddersfield, a small town in the north of England. You know it.
And we got the footage you can roll in the background where you're confronting some of the suspects here, right?
The reason for that is that now, so many of these, now I'm still getting angry even looking at them. These men are walking into court like they're gangsters. They're in court for raping young kids. I just don't understand the audacity. And when I talk about the attitude problem that's happening here, the security guards in that court were Muslim. I watched it. They all shook their hand. The other people that were Muslim in court for driving offences and other offences who were not part of this rape gang, they all shook their hand. They see no problem. These men don't have to walk the streets in shame. They walk their communities proud. No one's grasping them. No one's told the police of them. It's accepted. That's part of their culture. We all know it, or I know it, and if the viewers don't, within Islam, Muhammad took sexual slaves. Non-Muslim women are allowed to be taken as sexual slaves. It says 4 or 5 times in the Quran, outside of your 4 wives, take whatever your right arm possesses as sexual slaves. Non-Muslim women. The justification for these, and you have to ask why 90% of street gang convictions are Muslim men. 20% are called Muhammad. And here's where the problem comes. Outside that court case where I was waiting there, I was doing a video, and what I said is, there's 28 men, 27 of them are Muslim, and 30% are called Muhammad. And a woman walked past and said, why are you being racist? That's what she asked me. And I went after her, I said, I just stated a fact. I'm at the court case, 30%, 8 of them are called Muhammad. And she said, oh, you're racist, you've come up here to be racist. Not a mention of the disgust at the fact that 11-year-old white English girls have been prostituted and beat. I'm going to another court case tomorrow where there's 17 Muslim men in the town of Oxford in the UK, a beautiful middle-class town. There's 25 Muslim men coming up on a trial in Halifax. This is a rape jihad that has swept our country. And what they're doing now is when these cases come up, which is the reason why we're going to the court cases and we're going to report on them, is it's not hitting national news. Could you imagine 28 Englishmen had gang raped, prostituted and beaten 120 Muslim young girls?
Absolutely incredible, Tommy. We've got a break coming up. We'll be back with Tommy Robinson. We'll skip the break, actually. We're going to continue with this. We have Tommy Robinson on the line there. Again, he confronted these accused Muslim rape gangs, and it goes back to the problem with political correctness. There was an ongoing ritual abuse of children in Rotherham. Absolutely amazing. Going to get back into it with Tommy Robinson here in a second. But we have Alex Jones live. Alex, you're on the air. Go ahead.
That's right. I skipped this break, so Tommy, doing some of the most important work in the world, and you, of course, Paul, and our great team would have more time today. But I'm going to be co-hosting with you a little bit in this segment into the next. Obviously, I can't make statements because of the gag order until this Friday when it's lifted, and I'll be really happy to be able to respond to MSM and all the unprecedented behavior they're involved in. But look, I was somebody 10 years ago that didn't like Islam or radical Islam or Orthodox Islam, but didn't believe people like Mr. Robinson. When I was aware of him, I read his writings, I saw him on UK television being demonized. I thought, oh, the left's exaggerating. He's not that bad. But come on, there's not rape gangs. They're not grooming women. They're not. And then all of it comes out, and now I'm experiencing it here in the United States, and I see the burning cars, the dead police every night in France or in areas like Brussels, Belgium, or places like Stockholm, Sweden, being run over by cars, being stabbed, being shot outside Big Ben in Parliament. Hundreds and hundreds killed every few months in Europe alone that we know of. And then I see mainstream news say Donald Trump's horrible last Thursday for saying that this was a terror attack in France. It was jihadists screaming Allah Akbar, shooting police and attacking a police bus. And still the news won't call it terror. They are attempting to overthrow reality. And that's what's so incredible to see the left openly ally. When I hear Mr. Robinson and people out there like David Horowitz saying this 16 years ago, I attacked Horowitz. I said, this is crazy that the left is going to ally with Islam when they sell women as slaves. And then a few months ago, it was Trevor Noah, it was a couple of them made fun of me for saying that they're selling women on slave blocks at slave auctions in the failed state of Libya, thanks to Hillary and Obama. Well, that's in International Business Times, Reuters, AP, but they don't care. They make fun of me and say, I'm a liar, I'm an actor, I'm a fraud, I don't mean what I'm saying. Okay, well, let's just say I'm a fraud, which I'm not. Look at the guests we have. Look at the verified information, how we're changing the world, how the planet's awakening. So they tried calling us racist, didn't work. Now we're Russian spies, didn't work. So now they go, oh, we asked him why he was in a movie and said, oh, you're an actor. And I said, yeah, in movies, I'm an actor. But what I say politically is what I believe. Oh, my God, he admits he's fake. He admits he's fake. And on none of these TV networks attacking me, and again, this is attacking all of you folks, #1 news story for a week and a half is that I say I'm fake. I say I'm a fraud. I say I don't believe what I'm saying. I admit I'm a liar. They never show a video clip. They never show a statement. They never show anything. They literally sit there while everybody knows what they're trying to do to me right now that I can't talk about. And they take the most extreme stuff I've done to illustrate things and say, that's who I am. And I say, no, that was an illustration when I was in a Joker outfit saying evil things. That's not who I am. They go, oh, you're all fake. This is how they just, here's the good news. Calling us all racist didn't work. Calling us Russian agents didn't work. Calling us all these other crazy things didn't work. Calling us crazy didn't work. So now, saying that I'm a fake doesn't work. Everybody knows there's an Islamic invasion. Everybody knows there's political correctness and we're not supposed to speak out. Everybody knows we're supposed to sit down and shut up. And thank God. And I don't just say this to kiss his ass. It's true. People like Mr. Robinson, who 12, 13, 14 years ago were demonized like nobody else. Like I'm being demonized right now. But he was the top guy for years over there on the news every night being lied about, never allowed to respond, because he was telling the truth and ringing the alarm bell. And that's a hero right there, when somebody's willing to tell the truth up front, knowing you're going to get crushed for doing it. But you know what? I'm proud to do this. I'm no hero. We're going to get totally crushed and lose if we don't do this. And as men, it's our job to do it. So I don't do this because I'm a hero or I've even got courage. I'm afraid of the globalist and their Islamic hordes having victory. So I do this out of desperation for my family. Back to Paul Watson and Mr. Robinson. I'll come back with some more comments in the next segment, but you guys take over.
Okay, we're trying to get Tommy back. He's back on the line, I believe. We have Tommy. Tommy, you were just talking about it before. Again, Rotherham. They say, oh, political correctness is just being nice. It's just being polite. Political correctness was the primary reason why, 1,400 girls were abused by these Pakistani rape gangs for a period of 13 years. Nobody wanted to talk about it because of the identity of the groomers, of the people kidnapping and selling these girls into sex slavery. That's the cost of political correctness, Tommy.
Yeah, when people say how powerful is political correctness, Well, it made a country stand still while a generation of children were raped. That's how powerful. Well, and when we talk about Rotherham, Paul, in Rotherham, there's only about 3,500 Muslim men that hit the age of the groomers. Rotherham doesn't have that many Muslims. Rotherham's not a town that has a huge Muslim population. The only reason why we know of the figure 1,400 is because of a charity called Risky Business that kept all of the figures and statistics of the girls and the children they were dealing with. Now, there were attempts made to destroy that evidence. There were attempts made. So I think Rotherham's been used as a scapegoat town, whereas the true figures for cities like Bradford, Birmingham, the true cities like this will be in excess of thousands and thousands and thousands. The 1,400 sounds bad, but that's the tip of the iceberg. That's the tip of the iceberg.
And yet, again, we saw the feminists in France yesterday. They're not upset about this. They're not, well, the women are in France, the ones who don't go out and expose themselves, the actual women voters. Majority voted for Marine Le Pen in France because of the threats they face, because they don't feel safe. They've done polls where they tell pollsters that they don't feel safe. She got the most votes from women, yet we have feminists out trying to block people from voting from Marine Le Pen, who would be the first female president of France, the only candidate who has actual policies to address these issues, which represent a direct threat to women with this hostile culture coming in that treats women like second-class citizens. What is the fundamental disconnect? I mean, I guess it's just Islamism, feminism, the far left. They all have the general same goal of destabilizing society, overturning everything. So they've formed this toxic alliance, even though on the surface it's completely contradictory to the ideals of original feminism to protect women and women's rights.
It's like they use each other. They're using each other. Because even the Marxists and the communists, they hate each other. But they'll side and back up Islam because they see it as an ally in getting their way, defeating the rule of law and defeating democracy. When we talk about Islam and feminism, I heard a gay man interviewed about Le Pen in Iran, and they were saying that she's not for same-sex marriages. But he said, but I won't get killed by her, and she will stop the people that want to come in and kill me. So if the difference between not being able to marry my partner or stay alive and not get violently attacked by hordes of immigrants that she's bringing in that have complete homophobic views and want to perpetrate violence.
Sure, and in fact, Tommy and Paul, let me...
Go ahead, Alex, jump in.
Right here. We're on a three-way talk here, and I'm going to come back to the next segment with you guys, but I've just got to jump in. Again, it's total suicide, this alliance the left has, because they're anti-Christian, anti-West, with the Islamicists, and they believe they can control Islam to bring it in and cause such a crisis. They can then come in and take all of our freedoms because of the crisis Islam will cause, claiming that we caused the crisis, but clearly they're the ones. And so, Tommy, how is it going to work for them now that they're hoax? And Paul, this as well, that the MSM's hoax, that Islam is peaceful and loving and good when it's really an out-of-control authoritarian cancer. As this implodes, how do you expect these battle lines to play out? Because, you know, she's in the runoff now against the social moderate Democrat, or whatever you call him. He was in the news last week saying, just accept terror attacks. It's part of life. What the hell is this white flag to Islam? And now that the dam's breaking, where do you expect this fight to go?
Go ahead, Tommy.
I'd say that you're right. The dam is breaking. We're seeing the collapse. With Paul, you probably get the same. I get the same everywhere I go. I'm supposedly the most hated man in Britain. That's what they tag me as. So come and spend a day with me walking the streets. I don't get anything but support. The general public are awake. I even went to a university yesterday. I went to York University campus. This was a university that cancelled a speech by me. So I went to the university. I walked onto campus. The first three people come up to me were students, middle class, who supported me, who want to hear. They all are understanding now. A lot of people are. There were two students who had a go at me. One called me a racist. When I stopped and asked him, explain how I'm racist, dumbfounded, couldn't say a thing. Another man said, I just don't like you. When I asked, why don't you like me? He said, I don't know. And he said, because you make ridiculous statements. I said, give me one.
We'll be back, Tommy. Paul?
Yeah, they've got no argument. You challenge them on why they call you a racist. They never have any actual argument. We'll be back with Tommy Robinson. He confronted one of his Twitter trolls. That made for an interesting video. We're going to ask him about that and more. This is the Alex Jones Show, live, Infowars.com. We'll be back. Don't go away.
But here's the deal. Europeans can be tribalist and racist. Africans can be tribalist and racist. Asians can be tribalist and racist. And in ancient times, that was normal because generally a tribe from over the hill or whatever, if you had better fishing grounds, better hunting grounds, they'd come drive you out of there. Now, in the modern Christian culture that hasn't been perfect, but that's what changed the world, created the new system we have. It was about your heart and soul and what you stood for and being affiliated with God and free societies. Kind of the Renaissance meets Christianity. And the Old Testament Judaism, not the Babylonian Talmud Judaism that's something completely different. Basically Satanism. When you sit here and you look at all this, Judeo-Christian values, people always get mad, go, we're not Judeo, or we're not. Yeah, it's Judeo-Christian values with common law, European common law, which was pretty commonsensical as well. So that's the merger of those three laws. That's taught in law school. Okay, that's a fact. And in come the Muslims that have their Sharia law that they say is the only law. We just had these doctors arrested here mutilating little girls, reportedly, in the United States. Well, they're promoting Hillary's assistant and girlfriend's mother's the most famous Islamic woman, writing books about mutilating women and how it must be done, literally cutting their genitals off. And a lot of ignorant people say, how do you cut a woman's genitals off? Real easy. Woman has genitals. Dumbasses, excuse me. Really makes me mad. And I'm not patronizing to women. It makes me mad. You know, as a man, seeing women gets me angry. Women and children, you know, women and children get to the lifeboats first. That's what society's about. But they remove women from being with a culture that actually wants to empower them and protect them, and then bring in another culture that totally enslaves them, and then make jokes about slave ships and slave blocks and slave auctions in Libya, and say I'm crazy, it doesn't exist, even though it's mainstream news. So this is the main threat, and the left is allied with them. So Tommy got cut off from the break. We're gonna go back to him in a moment. I'm gonna punch out of here and let him and Paul take over. They're allied with it, but I want to get his take on, sure, the dam's broken, we're beginning to win, but they're coming in with censorship in Europe, the UK, the US, saying shut us down, trying to pass laws where you can't criticize Islam. That's already the place in Germany, covering up their crime statistics. This is here, this is happening. So how does he see that playing out? Because look, it's Trump's 100 days coming up. He's going after radical Islam. He's building a wall. He's not letting in people from 7 countries that don't even have real passports, that don't even have working airports, most of them. Somalia, Libya, these places. You know, people with slave auctions, with collapsed airports bombed out, with crazy jihadis running in, where planes barely land and take off, with fake caliphate stamped, you know, where the Grand Imam of ISIS gives passports to Habib to get on planes and come over and blow stuff up. And they're acting like Trump's bad, trying to block that. So he's done a great job on the economy, a great job on getting the stock market up, a great job on so many fronts. Is he perfect? No, but he's an American president, not a globalist. But the globalists are allied with Islam. And I want to get Paul's and, of course, also Mr. Robertson's take, Tommy's take on this after I leave. Briefly, we fund our operation selling super high-quality products. Anybody can see that InfoWars is now under as much attack in the United States. It's ridiculous. The lies, the twisting. I guess they thought because, you know, right now with what's going on in courts, I can't speak out. Well, that affect me on separate lies they told. They're separate from court. But it is just all-out assault. I'm not that important. They know, though, if they can set a precedent to shut me down, as they're calling for, then they can shut anybody down. Because we really do reach 45 million people conservatively a week. And we're going out and getting like Paul, millions a week. Tens of millions a week, Paul reaches. Conservatively, 15 million, sometimes 30, 40 million. Tommy reaches tens of millions. We're all coming together. There's a quickening of every race, color, and creed that want justice and freedom. And the globalists are scared. And they're scared of their whole system being exposed. And they're scared of how bona fide and how unscripted and how real we are. So that's why they say we're fake or we're racist or don't like Obamacare, you're a racist. It's crap. It doesn't work. Now, I misspoke this weekend because I've been busy. And I was told by my warehouse guys that shipment of DNA force had come in. We had a limited, only a few thousand bottles, which, believe me, I wish we never sold out of it. I could fund our operation. We have to pass California standards, which are almost impossible. It's very hard to source organic bio-PQQ, CoQ10, all the stuff that's in DNA force. You know, nerve growth refactor, 100-something studies we can even talk about, because in Europe, a lot of this stuff is, you know, actually pharmaceuticals. The Japanese are obsessed with it. That's where we get the bio-PQQ from. It's amazing what it does for your body, the ultimate antioxidant, and so much more. I was wrong. The 18-wheeler with the shipment of it, air-conditioned 18-wheeler, doesn't show up till Wednesday. And then There's only a few thousand bottles. So if you want DNA Force, InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com, sign up in the email box to get on the waiting list. You'll get 25%, Buckley, I wanted to do? Even though it's going to sell out, 25% off our flagship product. Some of our products are $9.95. Some of our products are $100 because just the BioPQQ in it costs us $35,000 to $40,000 per kilo. Just what's in the bottle is $35 to $40 just to the BioPQQ. So again, find out about BioPQQ. There's all these synthetic ones where it doesn't even do anything, and it's like $50 for a bottle, not even as strong as ours. That's just one ingredient. Ours has got like a whole bunch of ingredients. Top scientists developed it. Here's an example. I'm going to throw this back. A lot of this was already best-selling brand names from goods and stuff that we bought and had private labeled, and then we discounted. Our colloidal silver's that. It's at $25. It's like $15 or whatever, and it's the same stuff Whole Foods sells for $25. But a lot of it is stuff I came up with. I went to the scientists and the developers. And I said, I want grass certified, FDA seen as safe ingredients. Everything we do is grass. That's a law. But then you can get, it's a danger zone. We know we're under scrutiny. There's some great stuff that isn't grass out there we like to sell. I think it's not green grass. It's a law Congress passed about what's seen as safe as supplements, as nutraceuticals. But my lawyer gave me the authorization to do this. Randall Wilhite is the top family law lawyer in Texas. His name's on the family law book. When they codify the law for 2 years, he codifies it, rewrites it, and they pass it. And he said, listen, you can say this, I've been on 4 different prescriptions. He's a big old healthy guy. He was Racehorse Haynes' top lawyer, would be the top criminal lawyer probably in the country right now, but he does family law. And he said, you say this, I went to the top sleep specialist at UT and other places because I worked so hard. I got in a rhythm of not sleeping. I cannot sleep. Even prescriptions wouldn't do it. He goes, I'd taken melatonin. The store didn't do it. He goes, why does knockout make me, he looks like 10 years younger right now. He goes, I owe my life to you. I want to come on here and talk about this. No charge. And I said, no, everybody does this. He goes, who developed it? I said, I just thought if it's $19.95 for a little bottle of melatonin, why not have the same but organic, not synthetic, $19.95, and then add the L-tryptophan, the valerian root, the lemon balm, the concentrated kids chamomile, and a bunch of other stuff. I checked with the experts. There's no countervening problems mixing them together. Still check with your physician. And it synergistically works together and gives you the best sleep you've seen personally. Go see the hundreds and hundreds of 5-star reviews. Get your knockout today. It's $19.95. I'm thinking about putting it in a glass bottle, making it all fancy, selling it for more just to fund our operation instead of just, low cost, black and white bottle. I designed it, my idea, everything. That's really my baby. But it's all the Mother Nature, all the wives' tales, best stuff that we all, also know individually what they do now via science together. $19.95 and a pretty good sized pill, though. You take one, great sleep. You take 2, watch out. It is knockout. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com. That's how we're financing Paul, this whole operation, and all these great guests and the platform to promote others, thanks to you. So great products and support InfoWars, InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. Now back to Tommy Robinson. Support him and the work he's doing, and Paul Watson here in Austin, Texas. And then, of course, they got the 4th hour with other great hosts as well. But spread the link, InfoWars.com/show. There's a reason they're trying to shut us down.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Now we're going to go back to Tommy. Tommy, Alex mentioned that during his monologue, FGM. We have an article out of Daily Call I'm going to read to you here. New York Times refuses to use term female genital mutilation because it's culturally loaded. Worried that the term female genital mutilation might sharpen the divide between those who oppose brutally cutting away a little girl's genitalia to deprive her of sexual pleasure and those who practice the, quote, right. One New York Times editor, and in fact this is prevalent throughout the entire New York Times, instead refers to the ritual as genital cutting. Tommy, it's just cutting. It's just like going to the hairdressers, right? They're even afraid to use the very term now when they talk about it.
I looked into this. I had a real in-depth look into the laws, into the side effects, into the mental health issues on the children, on the women as they grow older. It's barbaric. It's backward. It's disgusting. 55,000 girls, British girls. Now, you're not one person prosecuted. Now, the law is that the person if their parents allow it to happen, they get 7 years in prison. The person cutting the girl, 14 years in prison. Now, why has no one been prosecuted in the UK? These laws have been around for 30 years. Why has not one person been prosecuted? Well, if we prosecuted parents on 55,000 children, our prison system only holds 80,000 criminals. We don't have the accommodation or the facility right now in Britain to even tackle this child abuse. We can't. That's why I try and work out, why are they not arresting them? Is it because they're scared of them? Is it because their cultural diversity is so powerful? What's the reason? And I just think that they can't. And it's similar to the grooming. It would be such a mass effort. And it's disgusting. I think this, I've seen the doctors arrested in America, but what's actually happened in the UK will be viewed as a dark stain on British history, that we allowed young children to be mutilated in the name of Islam. And this comes down to, I even looked into what the Prophet Muhammad said about it. The Prophet Muhammad sanctioned that. So when people say it's got nothing to do with Islam, I found hadith after hadith after hadith with comment after comment after comment from Muhammad blessing it, wanting it, and instructing for it. So I hope that America protects its children, whether they be Muslim, Christian, or whoever they are, protects them. And Birmingham Police Force in the UK, they actually put a tweet out off their police force's Twitter account saying that it would not benefit the children to prosecute the parents. It might benefit the next children if you put the parents in jail for 7 years and you take the girls into care and give them a life free of slavery, then it might actually stop some of these parents doing it. But you're actually encouraging it and allowing it in our country for tens of thousands of young girls to be mutilated. It sickens me. When I actually, because I looked into it, anyone out there who's not looked into this, it is, and I've heard people try and compare it to Jewish circumcision. It's nothing like it. It doesn't compare.
We just lost Tommy there for a moment. We'll try and get him back. The point about
these girls are mutilated
Go ahead.
for the rest of their.
Yeah, we're having trouble with Tommy there. We'll try and get him back on a good connection. We have to remember, of course, that here in the United States, Linda Sarsour, who is the big feminist icon right now, she's an FGM advocate. She literally made jokes about Ayaan Hirsi Ali being mutilated. She's an FGM victim. Ayaan Hirsi Ali escaped an Islamic country, integrated into the West, became a vocal, prominent ex-Muslim reformist. She is a victim of female genital mutilation. And there you have it. Daily Wire, Muslim Women's March organizer, Linda Sarsour, attacks genital mutilation survivor. I would take her vagina away. She actually tweeted she would take the vagina away of an FGM victim. And she's the big feminist icon right now in the United States. She's the one leading the Women's March. Again, look into her background. Pro-Sharia, links with Hamas. Wears the hijab, promotes the hijab. We've talked about it over and over again. The far left is aligning with Islamism at every single turn, and it's absolutely disgusting. And it's no wonder that ISIS is coming out with manifestos saying, let's just go ahead and form that alliance. Let's give them weapons. Let's make them militant, because, again, they broadly share the same goals. Absolutely incredible situation. We're trying to get Tommy back on the line. His connection there is not very good. Let's hit some more news stories in the meantime. This is out of RT. 31% of Americans view Russia as greatest danger to US, highest rate in 3 decades. So the propaganda, to some extent, is working. Answering an open-ended question, 31% of Americans said Russia currently represents the greatest danger to the US. According to a new poll, it is the highest percentage of Americans expressing this sentiment in nearly 3 decades. They broke it down into Democrats and Republicans. Democrats, 39% of Democrats see Russia as the greatest threat to America, while 21% cited North Korea and 13% said it was China. Republicans and Republican-leaning independents said 27% North Korea the biggest threat, 21% Russia, and 18% Iran. So again, there's a huge split between Republicans and Democrats because most of them have bought into that propaganda about the Trump administration being in bed with the Russians, though, of course, that has died down in recent weeks after Trump bombed Syria. Talking about FGM just there, here's an article out of Westminster. UKIP tackle grooming gangs, FGM and Islamist schools. Further to the announcement of banning the burqa, which is what UKIP have called for with the general election coming up here in about 50 days' time. UKIP now plan on to take on grooming gangs with harsher sentences and shut schools teaching Islamist ideology in Britain, as Tommy was talking about. We've had this huge problem of Islamist teachings being prevalent amongst these schools in these Islamist ghetto areas in places like Birmingham. So UKIP has announced they're going to not only try and ban the burqa, they're going to take on these grooming gangs. They're going to try and shut down the epidemic of female genital mutilation. They want to introduce school-based medical checks for girls at high risk and prosecute the parents of those who have undergone the barbaric procedure. Tommy, you're back. UKIP's come out and said that they want to ban the burqa. They want to take on FGM. Is this going to be a successful platform in attracting votes, given polls show that increasing numbers of people are against the Islamization of our society?
Given that Paul Nuttall preached at a mosque before the Stoke election, gave out leaflets promising that they wouldn't ban halal, had Muslims who were pro-Sharia standing for the party. No, I doubt it. I think it's too little too late. Given that people like myself can't join UKIP, do I see them being strong on the Islamic point? The points they've made are all just general and logical. Who wouldn't want to stop female genital mutilation? It's not like, it wasn't really shocking to me that they want the burqa ban. I think that their campaign slogan should have been Stop Islam. Stop sitting on the fence. Stop trying to be an establishment movement. Get real with the real people who are sick to death, fed up, scared, terrified of what Islam's doing. Don't sit on the fence. Just tell the truth. Be honest. Be honest. We need to stop the influence Islam has. Don't try and get to the points. That's what I think they needed to do. That's what I wish they did do. I wish that UKIP would have took this on years ago so that could have relaxed and gone back to work.
All right, Tommy, stay there. We'll do one more segment with Tommy Robinson. This is the Alex Jones Show live. Infowars.com. We'll be back. We're live. Final segment with Tommy Robinson. First, a bit of breaking news. The Independent reports French election. Marine Le Pen temporarily steps down as Front National leader to concentrate on presidential bid. There's a lot of confusion over that. People thinking she's dropped out of the presidential election altogether. That's not happened. She stepped down from the leadership role in the Front National Party. That's just breaking now. She will concentrate on the presidential bid, so she's not stepping down altogether. But we'll get more on that because that's just broke on Twitter. Final segment with Tommy Robinson. There's a famous moment in the film Captain Phillips, which a lot of people will have seen, where, you know, their ship gets hijacked by Somali pirates, and one of the pirates looks Tom Hanks in the eye and says, "Look at me, I'm the captain now." And I think for the media, they've had that realization recently, Tommy, because you're basically taking their place. You're looking them in the eye and saying, "Look at me, I'm the media now." You're a journalist now, you're a commentator. They absolutely freaked out when you had the temerity to get a microphone and go to Westminster to report on a national breaking news event that had just happened. They just couldn't fathom what was going on. How panicked has the media become in just the short space of time that you've actually dared to challenge their narrative, especially as relates to the Westminster attack?
They're panicked. And with that Westminster attack, I was there. I was 2 minutes away making a video, ironically, about a warning about the threat Islam poses to us. I'm enjoying what I'm doing currently. When I'm seeing journalists, I had one from The Guardian, and I'm interviewing them. I'm interviewing them. So for years, they've been interviewing me. I'm going up to them and interviewing them on their knowledge. If they're reporting on people who are opposing Islam, what's their knowledge on Islam? And I'm not shocked, actually, but their ignorance is so bad. Like, for example, I asked this Guardian journalist, have you read the Quran? No. What do you understand about Sharia? Nothing. What about the life of Muhammad, the man that these people are protesting about his actions? Have you read about his life? No. Just ignorance, complete ignorance on an issue that they've been reporting about for 10 years.
You can see it in the video here, Tommy. You went up to this Guardian journalist and he had basically no idea what was going on about Antifa, right? He didn't even know that they were being violent.
Well, that's the point. He did. He'd seen them because he walked with me. He saw how violent they were. And the reason why we're doing this is to show the other side. So I, for so long, I've been at English Defence League demonstrations. The media will run violence at EDL rally as 30 arrested. Now, I've known for years those 30 that were arrested were far left Antifa fascists. and the EDL would have been behaved at their demonstration. So I went to this demonstration here, and I actually called the journalist out. I said, are any of you going to report the truth? I've watched as men with balaclavas have attacked people. Will any of you report this? Well, I said, the reason why we're here is to report the truth, not to give a favourable slant, but just tell people the truth, which is what people want. And I took a good moment with him to remind him that the Guardian in financial disarray, they're losing money, they're begging for donations, and their time is up. And for the mainstream media, it's a good way of saying to the mainstream media, meet the new media, because people have been waiting and begging and are so electrified by the fact that we're going to report on the stories that the mainstream media are hiding. We're going to report on the things that they don't want to tell. We're going to make sure people are fully aware of here's what's going on, here's who's doing it, and here's how it's happening.
And they're incredibly nervous about it. Tommy, we've got about 20 seconds left. Just tell people where they can find your work on Rebel and on Twitter.
On Twitter, which is my Twitter page, on Rebel, join Rebel on YouTube. Follow us. We've got so much content coming out. We're going tonight to we're going to see another journalist tonight. We're going to confront him, just ask him to back up his views, back up his points that he's writing about.
And you are the author of Enemy of the State. People can find that on amazon.co.uk, amazon.com. Tommy, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks a lot.
There goes Tommy Robinson. We'll be back with another segment. Breaking news on the Alex Jones Show live, Infowars.com. We'll be back. Don't go away. We are into the third hour, the fourth hour, sorry, of the Alex Jones Show. We got David Knight coming up with the rest of the fourth hour with fresh breaking news. Final few news stories here for me to cover, though. InformationLiberation.com reports instant justice. Antifa assaults journalist in D.C. gets arrested immediately. Turns out when you punch someone in the face for having a different opinion, you get arrested, you get a criminal record. That's what happens. I think we got a video that we can start rolling over this. Instant justice was served up Sunday in Washington, D.C. after an Antifa goon punched Rebel Media reporter, and also guest on this show before, Jack Posobiec, in an unprovoked assault. You can see during the attack, he basically punches him in the face. Within seconds, they actually do their job. The cops do their job, arrest the guy. He just thinks he can walk around punching people in the face because somebody called them a Nazi. Of course, to far leftists, anyone who disagrees with them is a Nazi. But then what's interesting, if you go back to the start of this clip, you can actually see a screenshot. I think it's also in the article, Information Liberation article, of an individual called Luke Kuhn, the guy with the longer hair. Now, we've seen this guy before. He'll come into shot. There he is there in the screenshot from the article. This is out of Gateway Pundit. Violating probation, Antifa member arrested for plotting acid attacks at inauguration, spotted at D.C. protests. This is the same guy arrested for the acid attack plot at the inaugural. You remember that one, right, on the day of the inauguration. Luke Kuhn, busted by Project Veritas undercover journalist, plotting butyric acid attacks to disrupt Trump's inauguration party, subsequently arrested. Now he's a member of Antifa. Well, isn't that interesting? What perfect bedfellows they make. People who literally plot terrorist attacks, which is what that is, a violent attack in furtherance of a political aim, the very definition of a terrorist attack. Now he's a member of Antifa, a domestic terrorist organization. Isn't that just lovely stuff? So no surprise to see Luke Kuhn there on the scene while this guy gets instant justice. Again, turns out you can't just go around punching people in the face because they have a different opinion. Bad consequences will ensue. Washington Examiner reports, Wash Post poll hides Trump still beats Clinton 43 to 40%. So they asked people how they would vote if they voted again in a U.S. presidential election. The new survey finds 46% saying they voted for Clinton and 43% for Trump, similar to her 2% national vote margin. Asked how they would vote if the election was held today, 43% said they would support Trump and 40% say Clinton. So not only would Trump win the Electoral College if the vote was reheld today, he would also win the popular vote. So they tried to spin this narrative after Brexit of regret, and that everybody who voted for Brexit in the weeks afterwards couldn't stand it. It was a massive mistake that they voted for Brexit. As with that, the polls showed it was absolute nonsense. The vast majority of people who voted for Brexit were happy with it. They did not regret it. Same case as in the voters for Trump. In fact, now more people would vote for Trump, he would win by an even bigger margin. Huffington Post forced to apologize for racist propaganda. Editor-in-chief resigns. You remember they had that spoof story that somebody uploaded to the Huffington Post website saying that men should be disenfranchised, that they shouldn't get the vote. Well, now the editor-in-chief has been forced to resign because, again, they published that story with no fact-checking whatsoever. It was a hoax story, a spoof, to shine a light, to prove that the Huffington Post is a racist outlet that will just publish anything so long as it's hatred towards white people. It was a hoax story. They fell for it. Now they're getting the fallout. Absolutely incredible. And we also have another story here. Hate crime hoax. Muslim prof fabricated anti-Muslim threats to gain sympathy. Yet another example of fake hate crimes being blamed on Trump supporters that completely collapse when you analyze the details. David Knight is coming up with the rest of the fourth hour. It's the Alex Jones Show Live. Infowars.com. We'll be back.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. I want to take a look. We've looked at the elections that happened this last weekend. We're going to take a look also at Earth Day that happened this last weekend. We got a great article from American Enterprise Institute that went down 18, not only just wrong predictions, but spectacularly wrong predictions. I mean, we would all be dead, quite literally, folks. Life expectancies of 45, all this other kind of stuff. And, of course, I brought out my magazines I love to keep around, Newsweek, Time Magazine, talking about in 1979 how we had about 5 or 6 years of oil left. That's right. All of these predictions by the experts, you know, because of science and so forth. So we're going to take a look at some of that. It's going to be a lot of fun then and now. But one thing I want to take a look at, and it's also kind of a flashback as well. What I saw this weekend with American Airlines, yet another incident of brutality by flight attendants on passengers, took me back to another time and place, East Germany, the Stasi, that culture. And it's really what we're seeing here now. You know, it's not just United Airlines. This is something that we can all see. If you've traveled much, you understand what's going on here. This is an attitude that is coming from the TSA. And I talked about this with United. I said, that's not really the core problem here. And now that we've had, in just a short period of time, another incident, even more brutal, with another airline, I think we need to understand that it's not just American Airlines. It's not United Airlines. This is an anti-American way of looking at things. This is authoritarian airlines. That's what we've gotten from the TSA. The TSA basically bullies people as you come into the airport with ineffective security, of course. You know, this attack that we saw on Palm Sunday in Egypt, where the guy walks up to the metal detector and explodes it and kills a lot of people right there. That was nothing compared to what a terrorist will do at an airport when they do that same sort of thing. We've had many security experts say bunching people up at the front of the airport just makes a lot of easy targets for a suicide bomber. And we saw that at the church in Egypt. So it's not effective security. Nothing that the government is doing is effective. We have traded our liberty. We have traded our freedom. We have traded our dignity to be treated like animals, and we're not going to be safer for it. And of course, this is all psychological conditioning. They do it to our children in the schools, and most parents don't really understand the degrading situation that has been established in the schools. But that's all authoritarian training for them. But it's very apparent when you look at the travel situations at the airport. This is B.F. Skinner, the guy who wrote the book, Beyond Freedom and Dignity. I remember when my wife had to take that as part of her core curriculum in college, and I said, it's about time somebody started complaining about the way they treat us in schools. And this is before metal detectors and locker inspections and police roaming the halls and tasering the students. None of that stuff had happened. And she said, no, you don't understand. She was an education major. She said, you don't understand. They're advocating this. They're advocating this behavior. They're advocating that we treat people like animals, like dogs or dolphins, that we use as positive operant conditioning. You do what I say. You let me touch you where you don't want to be touched, and I'll immediately reward you with something pleasant. That's positive operant conditioning. That's very different from smacking somebody over the face like we see these flight attendants do. But that's not really what they want to do. That's not really the conditioning that the government is in. The conditioning the government is in is the TSA thing. You let me do something you don't want me to do to you, and then I'll reward you instantly. The only thing missing is a little click, to before they treat us, to let us get on the plane. It's clicker training. That's what the TSA is doing to us. But when we look at what's happening with the stewards and the stewardesses on these planes, what I think is happening there is what we saw happen in East Germany. The fact that these people are bullied everywhere they go. They live in this environment, and eventually they just crack, and they do it to other people. But take a look at what happened. In case you're not familiar with this, I just want to show you the sobbing mother here and the guy, the hero, who stood up to this. And that's where we end this, is to have more people like the man who stood up and said, I'm not going to sit here and let you do this. I'm not going to let you bash a woman in the face. There he is. They've identified the man, the hero who did this. The guy is actually from Texas. Who would have thought that it'd be a Texan who would stand up to this tyranny? There's other people in other parts of the country that stand up to this stuff. Texas doesn't have a monopoly on it, but boy, I tell you what, they sure do have a preponderance of people who are not going to stand by and be bullied or let other people be bullied. He's not going to stand there, sit in his chair while somebody is bullying a woman who's holding a baby, smacks her in the face, and he stands up, that little pinhead bully there, right there, and the guy gets right back in his face. Can you play that little clip there that we've got? You don't have the clip.
Hey, sir. No, I'm not going to sit here and watch this stuff.
I don't know if you can hear her. She's crying, sobbing. The child is sobbing. She had two children in her hand. Now this guy walks on board.
Stay out of this.
If you're watching this, he gets right in his face. He says, you stay out of this. He goes, oh, you want to fight me? Come on, fight me. That type of thing. So it's that's exactly what we need. He says, I'm not going to stand here. Prior to that, he got up and he said, I want that guy's name. And then when the guy came back on, he got right in his face. And the guy said, go ahead, hit me. He would love for him to hit him because then he could call in the federal police on this guy. That's just what he's itching for. He can haul them away. They can beat him and haul him away. But we need people like this guy from Texas, this church deacon who's not going to stand there and let innocent people be bullied. He said, a baby almost got hurt. He says, that's what got me so fired up about it. And at the very end of that clip, that guy says, you don't know what happened. And he said, it doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't warrant you beating a woman and nearly hitting a baby. See, that's the difference. Okay, that's the difference. American Airlines has now apologized. They said, what we see on the video does not reflect our values or how we care for our customers, blah, blah, blah. We're deeply sorry for the pain we've caused to this passenger, her family, any other customers who've been affected by this incident. Okay, but again, as I said, it's not just them. Here's the attitude. Here's the attitude we have to look out for. On Town Hall, a piece by Jennifer Van Laar, and the headline says, Mom hit with a stroller on American Airlines flight wasn't following the rules. Oh, yeah. Okay. So smack her in the face with a stroller because she wasn't following these arbitrary, capricious rules, these lines that we drew. And I want to tell you where this comes from and where this ends up. A couple of years ago, there was a woman. Her name is Paula Kirby, and she writes essays on life in the GDR. That's the East German Republic. And the thing that got her going in this interview was the fact that she had looked up her Stasi files. And she was very surprised because she was a Brit. She had gone there. She really admired German communism. She was a big fan of it. And she is a big apologist for it, quite frankly. She says, no, it's not black and white. There was a lot that was good there. She said, I'm not going to paper over the people who were hurt by this authoritarian regime. But there were really good people there that just went on with their life, and they were able to get through and not run into any problems with the government. But then as she found out, she wanted to get her Stasi file. She said first she was amazed that they had a file on her because she was just so subservient and loving to that regime. But she had asked to marry a guy who was a citizen there. And when they got the files, they found that this guy, because he'd had two friends who had immigrated legally and two who had skipped out of East Germany, got through the wall illegally, they had labeled him as a cancer. They called him carcinogen. That was their code name for him. They had another code name for her, and she was surprised that they thought that she was also a threat to the police state and the Stasi state. But here's what she had to say about the ordinary people and how they went about their lives. She said, well, nearly all East Germans I got to know socially and professionally were warm and welcoming. An encounter with people in their official capacities was often stressful. Most shop assistants, waiters, post office clerks, ticket desk staff, maybe even flight attendants. Even, she said, doctors' receptionists often seem to go out of their way to convey their low opinion of you and their resentment at having to engage with you. Customer service, quote unquote, seemed to be an unknown concept, and to go shopping or to the local post office was to face an almost certain lecture on the many ways that you had failed to live up to expectations. You would be scolded for not having wrapped your parcel properly, or for not standing at the right place in the queue, for not stepping up to the counter quickly enough when it was your turn, for not having your ID ready to show, for not having the right change, for giving them too much small change, for speaking too quietly, and of course, for speaking too loudly. Such encounters were a constant test, it seemed. One we were all doomed to fail. In fact, all the challenges of everyday life in the GDR, this was the one that ground me down the most. Where does that kind of attitude come from? It comes from the kind of bureaucracy that they had in East Germany. We looked at this, and I read this article a few years ago, and that really stuck out to me. I was focused at the time on the secret files that they were keeping on everybody, because that was in the wake of the Snowden revelations. And that was one thing that really stuck out to me. And I thought, you know, that's very true of our airports. And now we see how this culture that is created by our authoritarian government that has no respect for you as an individual. They don't think that you deserve freedom or dignity. And how that attitude, and the people who come in contact with it the most, the people who are the flight attendants and the people who work on the airlines and at the airports, those people who come in contact with that, what does it turn them into? It's turning them into East Germany. The attitude that they have when they come to you, they are itching to do something or have you to do something so they can exercise their authority on you. They just want to pick a fight. Come on, hit me, hit me. I'll call in the federal police. They'll haul you away. We won't see you again. It's that attitude, that feedback that comes from the constant bullying of our government that treats us like animals to be controlled, and it turns us into animals. People who will strike a woman who is holding 2 babies in her hand because she didn't follow the rules. That's where we're headed. We have to understand what this is. We have to shut this down. We not only need people like this man who stood up to this bullying, we need an army of people who will demand our freedom, our dignity as human beings, and we will not be treated like this. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. I just want to say one more thing when I finish up here. There's a lot of tweets that came out talking about this incident on American Airlines. And as I said before, this isn't an American Airlines problem. This is American airlines and airports in general, okay? This is not a corporate problem. This is a government problem. And as one person tweeted out, wow, I used to be scared to fly because I thought the plane would crash. Those are the good old days. Wait until you see how bad this gets if we don't stand up to it. And again, the man who stood up to it, Tony Fierro, shout out to him. Good job, Tony. You stand up for women and children to these little pinheaded bullies like that. And of course, the guy would not have fought him. He would have just called for the police to haul him away. The employee says, he said to him, you try that, and again, I'll knock you flat. He goes, he says, try it. Hit me. You don't know what the story is. And he said, you almost hurt a baby. See, it doesn't matter that this lady didn't follow their petty little rules about where she needed to store her stroller. The guy could have come up and could have helped her. He could have offered her some assistance. And one of the articles here where they were looking at the various responses of people, somebody tweeted out, American Airlines apologist to a woman hit with a buggy by the crew member. Meanwhile, at Finnair, and they show a man who is a steward who is working for Finnair, and he's sitting there with a baby in his lap, and he is giving it a bottle because he's trying to help the customers. That's what people in other countries do. But we have different rules that are being set up here in America. There's that picture of him. And I tell you, if you've traveled abroad, it was very clear to us when I adopted, my wife and I and my family all went to China. We adopted my daughter there. When we were coming back out of Hong Kong, they said, well, if you're going to America, you got these special security procedures. Well, do this and this and this. Everybody else, don't worry about this. You go, and it said, isn't that amazing? The land of the free. And if you're going to America, you got to go to special areas or special shakedowns in compliance with the demands made by our American government. It doesn't make us safer, folks. It's just a show. Now, I want to get on to Earth Day, and we're going to talk about that. Before I look at some of these spectacularly wrong predictions that are actually kind of funny, I want to remind you that we have a new special. This is something that just was sent in by Alex Jones. He has reduced Caveman, the true paleo formula, 53% off. That's our new sale at InfoWarsStore.com. Of course, this is going to be for a limited time only. I have never seen anything discounted this deeply. 53% off paleo. This is the first time we've done this kind of a discount on Caveman. I don't remember seeing that kind of a discount on anything else, but 53% off. That's an additional 20% off top of the already huge 33% off retail special. That's for a limited time only and while supplies last. And of course, if you don't know what Caveman is, go to InfoWarsStore.com, read about it. It fuses super high quality bone broth with more than 7 additional primal superfoods to help support healthy muscles, fight free radicals, and so much more. The unique formulation behind Caveman combines cutting-edge nutraceutical science with ancient nutrition to deliver powerful benefits. You know, when you're getting that chicken soup that was organically made by grandma, what you're getting there is a lot of nutrients that are there, part of the bone broth. And that's something that we've always done, my wife and my daughter have done in our house. Now you can get it with turmeric root, chaga mushroom, bee pollen, as well as the bone broth. Caveman really is the ultimate and true paleo nutrition. So we take the best of the old nutritional understanding and we combine it with new technology, new ways to package this. And again, 53% off Caveman right now at InfoWarsStore.com. I want to take a look at, and we just got a couple of seconds here. We'll kind of finish up on this in the next segment. We got a longer segment. This is a story from American Enterprise Institute, and they're going back and looking at 18 spectacularly wrong predictions made the time of the first Earth Day, 1970. So here we are, 47 years in, and quite frankly, I remember when this all happened. I remember a lot of my friends freaking out about how we're going to have massive starvation. We're going to have a new ice age, so forth and so on. Yes, all the predictions have changed, haven't they? They were worried about nitrogen blocking out the sun, and now the big boogeyman is carbon. What they mean by that is carbon dioxide. You know, the stuff that is essential for plants to live, carbon dioxide that you breathe out. The plants take that in. They use that to grow, and then they give us oxygen, which we need. It's a wonderful symbiotic relationship that God designed. It's a closed loop that has its own correcting mechanism in it, but of course, they have to get us afraid of that. We're going to take a look at these predictions, and they went back and they looked at a May 2000 issue of Reason magazine, and it was pretty ridiculous even at that time. It's gotten even more ridiculous now, another 17 years later. That was the 30th anniversary there, so they updated it with some additional things. We've got 18 different ways where the Earth, because science people, got it spectacularly wrong. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We were talking about Earth Day, and not Earth Day 2 days ago, but Earth Day 47 years ago. Let's go back to 1970. Let's take a look at some of the dire predictions, as the American Enterprise Institute points out. They got it not only wrong, but spectacularly wrong back in 1970. They point out in their article in the May 2000 issue of Reason magazine, an award-winning science correspondent, Ronald Bailey, wrote an excellent article, Earth Day Then and Now. And that was 30 years on. Bailey noted that around the time of the first Earth Day in 1970 and in the years following, there was a torrent of apocalyptic predictions. Well, it's now the 47th anniversary, they point out. Good time to see where this went right and where it went wrong. I don't know that they got anything right. It'd be interesting to see if CNN has done an article of where the Earth Day people and the environmental movement got it right. I'd like to see if they can actually try to make a case where they got it right. So here's one. Harvard biologist George Wald estimated that, quote, civilization will end in 15 or 30 years. This is in 1970. Because I have to remind you that this is in 1970 because we keep hearing this type of stuff, don't we? It's always this moving, couple of decades out. It's 15, 20, 30 years, 50 years out. Because they love to talk about climate science. When I was at the meteorological convention, the American Meteorological Association, the AMA, had their convention here a couple of years ago. I went with Rob Jacobson, who was filming, and we talked to the scientists there. And there were actually real scientists there who were looking at weather models was that they would come up with the different factors that they thought were relevant, try to get measurements as accurate as they could, and then they would feed it in here and look at the predictions and then look at what actually happened a day or two or three or a week later. And they just couldn't get it right. And everybody there, I mean, it's a massive meeting. And everybody had their own models that they were working on and doing their experiments with. And then looking at it, it's like, well, we got this part of it right, but we didn't get this part of it. Or, you know, we're getting there maybe about 50% of the time or 60% of the time or whatever. What you don't see with climate science is the fact that they're making these predictions that are decades or centuries out. And, of course, they can't ever be tested. So it's an open loop. And so they're not going to come to you like they did at the American Meteorological Society and say, here's our model, and we predicted this, and then 3 days later or a week later or the next day, it's exactly what happened, so our model is right. No, they don't do that because they just resort to the fact that we're scientists. We own science. I have this degree in climate science, so trust me. I know what I'm talking about. Aren't you impressed? I even have a computer printout from the model that I can't test. So you should do exactly what I say. And they were talking there, and there was a Soros group that had a political booth there. It was the only political booth we saw. And of course, it was some Soros people. And they had a booth there, and they were bemoaning the fact that it was meteorologists who were not signing on to this. And he said, look, most meteorologists are not signing on to man-made climate change. And we need to change this. You people need to step up and lead. Because if you tell people this, they'll believe you. You have authority. See, that's the game that they play. They're telling all these scientists in the various universities, you need to tell people this because you have a PhD in something. In many cases, it's unrelated. You know, most of the people who are the leaders, like Michael Mann, they don't have a PhD in climate. They have a PhD in something else. But they're pontificating about this from their position of authority. So they're telling the meteorologists, look, you're talking about weather all the time. If you tell people that we're going to have catastrophic global warming, they'll believe you. You need to play along with us. You need to do this for the sake of the planet. And they simply don't believe it. Why? Because they're trying to predict the weather all the time, and it's absolutely absurd to them that these people are going to know what's going to happen decades, centuries out. And so he had this guy saying 15 or 30 years from now, unless immediate action is taken, he said, we're going to have civilization ending. Well, there's some more specific ones. Here's another one. Population will inevitably and completely outstrip whatever small increases in food supplies we make. This was Paul Ehrlich. This guy's still around making predictions. He said this in April 1970. He said the death rate will increase until at least 100 to 200 million people per year will be starving to death during the next 10 years. Because at that time, they thought they were going into an ice age. Most of the people who are going to die in the great cataclysm of history and man have already been born, wrote Paul Ehrlich in a 1969 essay called Eco-Catastrophe. He said by 1975, some experts feel that food shortages will have escalated the present level of world hunger and starvation into famines of unbelievable proportions. Yes, the proportions that they saw this escalating to truly were unbelievable. Here's another one. It is already too late to avoid mass starvation, declared Dennis Hayes. He was a chief organizer for the first Earth Day, spring 1970. And then we have another one. Peter Gunter, North Texas State University professor, wrote in 1970, demographers agree almost unanimously on the following grim timetable. By 1975, widespread famines will begin in India. They will be spread by 1990 to include all of India, Pakistan, China, and the Near East, Africa. By the year 2000, or conceivably sooner, South and Central America will exist under famine conditions. The only place that happened, by the way, is where the socialists took over, Venezuela. See, it's global socialism that we need to be worried about, not man-made global climate change. It's global socialism that has brought us widespread famines. Nothing else, folks, nothing else. It's when the government takes control of the means of production, when government seizes the energy resources, when government shuts us down. That's when we have famine. That's the only thing that you really need to be afraid of here, folks, not the climate. The only place where this came true is in Venezuela. But they were saying there was this timetable, 1975, widespread famines in India. By 90, it's going to go other places. Even by 2000, it's going to be South and Central America. By the year 2000, 30 years from now, he said, the entire world, with the exception of Western Europe, North America and Australia will be in famine. Another guy talks about the buildup of nitrogen, not carbon, nitrogen. He said it's only a matter of time before light will be filtered out of the atmosphere and none of our land will be usable. Barry Commoner predicted the decaying organic pollutants would use up all the oxygen in America's rivers, causing freshwater fish to suffocate. Paul Ehrlich, 1970, Audubon magazine, said DDT and other chlorinated hydrocarbons may have substantially reduced the life expectancy of people born since 1945. Paul Ehrlich warned in 1970 that Americans born since 1946 now have a life expectancy of only 49 years. And he predicted that if current patterns continued, this expectancy would reach 42 years, okay, by 1980. And then here's one I want to show you some more information on. Ecologist Kenneth Watt declared, by the year 2000, if present trends continue, we'll be using up crude oil at such a rate that there won't be any more crude oil. You'll drive up to the pump and say, fill her up, buddy. And he'll say, sorry, guy, there isn't any. Okay, well, now that was 1970, and then the predictions got even more dire. This is a guy who was saying by the year 2000, we're going to run out of oil. Okay, and then here are my favorite artifacts from the past. Okay, get a picture of this here. Newsweek magazine, July 1979, The Energy Crisis, a program for the 1980s. And if we pull in here, we look at this interesting graphic, why we must act now. Because at that point, in 1979, they were now saying, not that they had another 30 years only of oil, but they only had 8.7 years left of oil. And understand, this is not only the wacko environmentalists, but this is also the CIA and Exxon, organizations like that, who want you to think that their products are scarce. They want to be the De Beers of the diamond industry. Many people say, you know, why would Rex Tillerson push climate change and man-made global warming? Well, it's because Exxon wants to be to oil what De Beers is to diamonds. They want to tell you that they have all of the vanishing resources. It's only the dinosaurs that created this. It's not something that's ongoing, that's created by organic material. No, it was done by the dinosaurs, so we have a finite supply of this stuff. It's going to run out. They were telling us in 1979 we had 8.7 years left of crude oil, we had 10.7 years left of natural gas, and we had 666 years left of coal. That right there, because we had so much coal, even with their dire predictions. They were telling us we had no oil, no natural gas going to be left for in another decade, but we had centuries left of coal. That was why they had to shut down coal. That right there was why they had to shut down coal. They wanted to take over our energy, and they wanted to starve us out as the socialists, as the authoritarians did in Venezuela. And, of course, Time Magazine was doing the same stuff. It was not just one wacko issue from Newsweek. Everybody was telling us this. Everybody was telling us as we lined up for gasoline, and we did even and odd tags on alternating days, with a manufactured crisis, a crisis that was manufactured by the Saudis, by OPEC, and by their allies in the CIA, the people that they had worked with to put us on the petrodollar, to rig our currency, to rig our economy. All these people were working together to push this phony narrative that there's only so much oil on the ground. Sooner or later, there won't be enough to get around, as Tower Power used to say. And I didn't believe it. I liked the songs. I enjoyed some of the stuff. But I saved these magazines. I told my wife, I said, these are going to be collector's items someday. I never realized I would be on the radio showing them to millions of people to wake you up, to get you to understand these people are not authorities. We had all these vaunted authorities on Earth Day with these dire predictions, telling us that 9/10 of the tropical rainforest will be removed within the next 30 years. All this stuff was going to happen because, 2000 was going to be the date that everything was going to magically fall in place. It was going to be a policy of austerity, starvation, famine. But it didn't happen except in Venezuela, where Bernie Sanders wants to bring that system of government to us. And, of course, the European Union wants to do that as well. We see riots in the wake of the election yesterday. We have riots happening now in Paris. Police have been injured, 143 arrests, as the far left, the anti-fascists, the same people that we see here, Antifa, these are the same people that are rioting here. Look, let's understand. They're using all of the same phony narrative saying the Russians are going to be hacking the elections in Paris and so forth and so on. How many times are we going to hear the same stuff? How many times are we going to see the same people organizing this opposition in the same way? It's the same movie we just had here in America. The question is, will the French wake up? And the other question is, will Trump follow through? We have good and bad signs on whether or not Trump will follow through. And, of course, he's made some good comments. We're going to talk more about that tonight on the Nightly News. He's made some very good moves. Some things that he's done in terms of the war, I think, are going to be very counterproductive, if not destructive, of the movement against the globalists, because the key part of what they want to do is to create war. Now, the tack that mainstream media is taking, as we see Daily Mail, outsiders, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen, have swept to victory. So all the political parties, the mainstream establishment's been knocked out. No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. The mainstream has not been eliminated. The establishment parties have not been eliminated in the first round. We still have the most establishment candidate there. We have a Manchurian candidate there. And if you don't know who this guy is, you need to pay attention. When we look at the rise and the split on the left, because there's a big split on the left, the current sitting president, it's the first time that a French president has not run for re-election that is sitting, okay? So why did he not run for re-election? Well, he's been thoroughly discredited. Why was he discredited? One of the reasons he was discredited was not only because of what was happening with the massive transfer of people, but also because of what Macron did inside his administration. This is a guy who was a socialist. And to give you an idea of this candidate who rose up very quickly on the outside, Mélenchon, who was a real socialist, he was a real communist. He was wanting a 100% tax on income above 400,000 euros. That's about $425,000. So you would be allowed to make money up to 425,000 with increasingly higher tax rates. But once you got to that point, anything that you got over that, the government would take all of it. They said, we want to have, what was the term they had? It was rising. They wanted to have a cap on wages, and they wanted to raise taxes. And I saw that, and it's like, isn't that exactly the opposite of what serves everybody? I want a cap on taxes, and I want rising wages. But they wanted just the opposite because they're socialists, the same people that brought tragedy to Venezuela, are bringing tragedy to Venezuela. Now, currently, France has some of the highest income tax rates anywhere. They have a top rate right now of 45%. And that wasn't good enough for Holland, who is the current president who decided not to run. He is a socialist, and he proposed a 75% top rate in 2012. The proposal was rejected by the French courts. But you look at this and you say, why would a socialist president who wants a 75% tax rate to cap and to punish people who the rich, why would he pick somebody like Macron as an economics minister? Because Macron came into his administration straight out of Rothschilds. That's right. He's a Rothschild man. He's not an investment banker. He's a Rothschild guy that was put in there. And when we look at what's going on with this and the fact that this socialist president who did not run again, he's thoroughly discredited with his own people, and Macron had a lot to do with that because Macron was pushing the policies of the European oligarchs, people like Rothschild, people like Soros. He was the one who was pushing this. And so why would they bring in a guy when they're pushing for a 75% top rate, and then this guy, Mélenchon, comes out and says, no, we'll do better. We'll be real socialists. We'll go for a 100% tax rate. We'll take everything and give it to the government. There will never be a cap on the government's income. No, we will cap your income. That's what he's saying. When do we ever see a cap on what the government can take from us? No, we won't have that. Now, as we look at what happened with this, and we look at the rise of this particular guy, I think it's kind of interesting. Where did this guy come from? Well, there was an article by a Spectator, and they pointed out that he got out of school. A lot of people don't really know where he came from. He came up very quickly. He was in the socialist administration until last August, and then he got out. But how did he get into the socialist administration? Well, first he goes to school. He gets out, he gets his degree. He graduates from the National School of Administration. He joined the Upper Civil Service. And then in 2008, because he's got kind of what they do now with some school teachers in some places, they'll pay for their tuition, evidently, but you have to do a certain amount of time as a school teacher to get out of your student loan. So maybe there's something like that going on in France, because he had to pay 50,000 euros to buy himself out of the government contract. So he was obligated to stay with the government. He paid $50,000 to get out, and then he becomes an investment banker with Rothschild. And he was, as they say, highly regarded and quickly made a small fortune. And then before long, this guy, who is a banker, who is now very rich and wants all the policies of the bankers and the global elites, gets himself into the socialist government. We'll stay with us, and we'll break down where this led to next with Soros and the rest. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. This last segment, I want to break down these ties we've been telling you about at InfoWars since February. The ties of Macron to Rothschild, the ties of Macron to Soros and to Google. They even have his organization in March, or what March, okay? I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't speak French, and I would murder if I tried to. But the way that translates is moving. And it's a bunch of young people in an organization called Moving On. Sound familiar? Yeah, it's the same people doing the same stuff in France that they're doing here. This is a fight against the same globalists who are trying to do the same things to the French people that they've been trying to do to us. Before we get back to the news, however, before I break this down, I will just remind you that we have now added a new, deeper discount. We already had 33% off Caveman at InfoWarsStore.com. We've added an additional 20%. That's an unprecedented 53% off. As I said before, I don't recall anything being that deeply discounted at InfoWars. But, of course, this is for a limited time only while supplies last. Again, 53% off Caveman, our true paleo formulation. It fuses super high-quality bone broth with more than 7 different primal superfoods to help support healthy muscles, fight free radicals, and much more. You'll find things like turmeric root, chaga mushroom, bee pollen, bone broth. Caveman is the ultimate in true paleo nutrition. And just take a look at some of those things like turmeric root. Take a look at some of the studies that show the beneficial effects of turmeric in diet. It's very important. And so we have put a lot of things like that, bee pollen, other things like that. You can look these things up. You can look at the reviews that people have on InfoWarsStore.com. And also, we have been sold out of DNA Force, and now you can get on the list. It's going to be coming in soon. You can now get on the back order list. You can sign up there at InfoWarsStore.com. Get yourself on the list, and as soon as that comes in, you'll get your product there. But the list is already getting very backed up for DNA Force. Very important supplement that we have there that's been out of stock for a while, and we're now set up a list so that people get on that. Again, 53% off Caveman at InfoWarsStore.com. Now, getting back to Macron and the fact that we're told that all the establishment candidates are out. Nothing could be farther from the truth. This is the ultimate establishment man. Back in February 27th, we had an article from Jamie White, Le Pen's Rothschild rival. Muslim mass migration, he said, is unstoppable. He said 2 months ago, Europe must get used to mass immigration instead of resisting it, said the French presidential candidate, Macron. He said, we've entered a world of great migrations, and we will have more of it. Yes, we will, especially if we go into places like Syria and do regime change. That's where it begins. That's where we create the refugees. They don't need a place to live and a job here in America. They need peace where they are. And why doesn't the left talk about that? Very interesting. They should, but they have been taken over by the globalists. They don't really care about that. They want the mass migration of people, and so does Macron. He said, in the coming decades, we will have migrations from geopolitical conflicts that will continue to play. And we will have climate change migrations because the planet is in a state of deep imbalance. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. But we will have migrations because of their wars. And this guy wants to go into Syria as well. So he is all about climate change. He's all about globalist intervention. We had 2 weeks before that, Jerome Corsi laying out the connections between Soros and Google to Macron, and the fact that they were fighting on the side of that Google was trying to suppress information about Le Pen's party, launching a program called Cross-Check to censor the news, just as they're telling everybody it's the Russians who are trying to hack the election and put out fake information. They're the ones who are algorithmically censoring our information and being funded by Soros, who himself got a lot of seed money from the Rothschilds. Stay with us tonight for the InfoWars Nightly News at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, and continue on with the live 3 to 5. It'll be coming right up on our feed. Stay with us.
Let's go to Debit in Florida. Debit in Florida, you're on the air.
Great. Hey, thank you so much. Listen, I have bought your product, and I gotta say they're amazing. Anyone who's on the fence, buy it, because I've got Caveman, Superman Vitality, Secret 12, Vitamin Mineral Fusion. I've got the body armor.
Wow, thank you.
Wow.
You're the type of listener that makes it all possible. Which nutraceutical does you like best?
I really like the Vitamin Mineral Fusion, to be honest. That's
amazing.
Really incredible. I drank it in the morning, and I swear to you, I felt incredible. Like I haven't felt in weeks. My morning was fantastic, and I love you guys. I love the InfoWars crew, and I just want to I want to take this opportunity to tell anybody out there who's on the fence. Just buy it. You will love it. I'm telling you, I've never bought a bad product.
What you find in our news is the same thing you find in our products at InfoWarsLife.com. It's a win-win. InfoWarsLife.com.